You are the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Mizuki screamed at the boy who stood in front of him. Or did you think that everyone hates you for some other reason? Didn't you ever wonder why they glared at you, wouldn't let you near their children? It is because you are the demon that destroyed our village. Naruto slowly sank to the ground. That wasn't true. Mizuki was lying to him. There was no way that he could be the demon fox. Now, said Mizuki, starting to laugh, I will kill you and take the forbidden scroll from you. But you know something, Naruto? The village will thank me for killing the demon brat. And instead of being remembered as the traitor who stole the forbidden scroll, I will be remembered as the hero who killed the demon brat. Naruto looked up, anger showing clearly in his eyes. Mizuki had lied to him. He had thought that Mizuki was his friend, but Mizuki had betrayed him just like everyone else. Team Naruto growled out through clenched teeth, I'm gonna kill you. He covered the distance between himself and Mizuki at a speed that Mizuki's eyes couldn't follow, but Mizuki had already thrown his shuriken. Now you die, demon fox. Naruto saw the giant shuriken headed towards him. He saw the moon glint off the steel blades, and he knew there was no way he could dodge it. He saw his reflection in the shuriken for a split second, saw his eyes flash red, and then nothing. He felt the shuriken cutting into his chest, felt it sever his aorta and continue up his chest to completely bisect his jugular vein. There was a snick as the rope holding the scroll to his back was cut, and a slight thud as it fell to the ground, but Naruto didn't hear any of that, because he was dead before he hit the ground. Naruto awoke floating on his back in the middle of some sort of sewer. He slowly pushed himself upright. He slowly took stock of his surroundings. He seemed to be at the end of a corridor. But most of all, there was a huge cage in front of him with a piece of paper with the word seal on it. All he could see inside the cage was darkness. He stared harder and saw a rustle of movement, and he jumped backwards when a set of blood-red eyes snapped open in front of him. The figure chuckled and spoke in a deep, booming voice. Oh man, you should have seen the look on your face. Priceless. The figure chuckled again and then suddenly became serious. Who are you? Asked Naruto. How can you not know who I am? I mean, didn't the guy with the silver hair just tell you? Naruto's eyes widened and he took an involuntary step backwards. The Kyuubi no Kitsune, he breathed. Naruto, we have a lot to talk about, but we don't have time right now. Mizuki's shuriken damaged your internal organs so much that I can't heal them enough to stop you from dying. And even if I could do that, there's no way that I would be able to regenerate enough blood to stop you from dying of blood loss. Naruto looked quickly down at the wounds on his chest. His eyes widened as he saw that there was nothing there. Not even a scratch where Mizuki's shuriken had cut him. Here you feel no pain, and any injuries you take in the outside world will not show on your body while we're here. Here Kyuubi paused. Naruto, to stay alive, you must become a Shinigami. There was a burst of hellfire from Kyuubi's body, and for a second Naruto was able to see Kyuubi's full size. As the flames died away, he saw Kyuubi again. But what he saw was not what he had expected. Where Kyuubi had once stood, there now stood a boy of about 16 years old. He was dressed in a black turtleneck with a black jonin jacket over top of it. He had on black cargo pants and black ninja sandals. Kyuubi now had spiky black hair with red tips, and think Ichigo's hairstyle. But what really shocked Naruto was his arm. Not his arm, but what was tied to it. Tied onto the bicep of his right arm was a Konoha Haitai 8. Kyuubi grinned at the shocked expression on Naruto's face, but stopped him as he opened his mouth to ask questions. Like I said, we don't have time to answer questions. Here, take this. He held out his hand and a katana in a black sheath appeared in his hand. The hilt was bound in black ribbon. This will allow you to become a Shinigami. With that, he threw the katana to Naruto. Naruto caught it with one hand and pulled the blade out of its sheath and examined it. The blade itself was black, but at the base of the handle there was a ring with a foxtail hanging from it. You must take that sword and plunge it into your chest. Then I will be able to transfer some of my powers to you. That sword will become yours, but if you can master your Ryatsu, you will be able to change its shape and weight. Naruto swiftly plunged the sword into his chest. There was a flash of blue light, and then he was gone. Let's see what you can do, boy. Kyuubi slowly walked into the darkness of his cage until his form had completely disappeared. Back in the real world. Mizuki suddenly felt a pulse of energy behind him. As he turned, there was an explosion of black light. No, it's not possible, yelled Mizuki, his eyes wide. Behind him stood Naruto in a black kimono. with a katana slung over his shoulder. The wind whipped around in a circle, before blowing the dust swirling around him outwards. "Oh, it's completely possible, Mizuki team." He paused and put his hand on his chin in a mock thoughtful expression. "You know, I guess since you killed me, I should return the favor." Naruto raced a Mizuki faster than Mizuki's eyes could follow. "How is this possible?" yelled Mizuki, throwing another giant shuriken at him. Naruto pulled his sword in front of him, stopping the shuriken. Naruto swung down and sheared completely through the shuriken. Naruto unknowingly focused his Ryatsu into the blade of his sword and swung his blade at Mizuki. "Zero!" and Soul Flash, he barked out as he swung his sword at Mizuki. A blade of dark red Ryatsu fired from his sword. Mizuki had time to widen his eyes, and then the Zero hit him. The Zero had left a 10-foot-long gash in the ground, but at the end of the ash there was a crater, and nothing more. Naruto stared at his sword, which was still smoking from the force of the Zero, and simply said, "That was fucking awesome." Naruto sheathed his sword and ran into the woods before the Umbu could come and question. Naruto threw himself down on his bed. He stared at the katana he had propped against the wall. Noticed how the black sheath didn't reflect light at all. In fact, it seemed that I was actually absorbing any light that came near it. Puzzled, Naruto pushed himself upright and walked over to it. Naruto picked up his katana and stared at the sheath for a long moment. He felt himself being pulled toward the sheath and let his consciousness slip into the black. Naruto found himself standing on a sideways building. As he looked around, he saw that he was on a floor of building that were horizontal instead of vertical. "What the hell?" he wondered aloud. "I am the spirit of you, sword," rang a familiar voice. Naruto looked up and saw Kyuubi standing in front of him with a grin on his face. "Kyuubi, what are you doing here?" Kyuubi held up two fingers. "One," he said, putting down a finger, "is because I am the spirit of this word, and two, because now I have time to explain everything to you. Do you understand how a bijou is formed?" Naruto shook his head, not really understanding the importance of the question. "There is a large cycle to follow. First a human must become a hollow, that hollow must eat enough soul to become a jillion. If that jillion defeats another jillion and absorbs its Ryatsu, the jillion will turn into an ajuchas. Are you still following me?" "I'm starting to understand. If you keep explaining, I'm sure I'll get it." "Once that ajuchas swallows a Vasto Lord, then he will experience a tremendous increase in power and become an Arankar." During the entire lesson, Kyuubi had been illustrating the process with very poorly drawn pictures, some of which Naruto had to restrain his laughter at, but at this last drawing he couldn't contain himself. "Holy shit man, your drawings suck so bad," he said, trying to breath from laughing so hard. "On with the explanation," Kyuubi shouted, trying to get away from the fact that he had no talent when it came to drawing. "Now here is the final step, listen carefully. If an Arankar eats another Arankar to absorb its power, they will become a bijou. Just one question, what's a hollow?" Kyuubi mentally smashed himself in the head. Baka, baka, baka. I can't believe forgot that part. A hollow is a departed soul that has stayed in Depare for too long, or has stayed in the world of the living for too long, in which case a hollow may come to recruit the soul to join its ranks. If you refuse, well, there is no refusal. Kyuubi said flatly. "How did you become a hollow, Kyuubi?" "I died and was taken to Hueco Mundo, where the hollow live." "So you were a leaf shinobi before you died," said Naruto. Kyuubi shrugged. "You pretty much lose all your memories after you die. All I remember is that I had this headband." "You always talk about Ryatsu. What exactly is it?" "Most people only have one energy source in the body, correct? Well, you have three. You have regular chakra, which is the basis or power for ninja. You have demon chakra. And finally, you have your Ryatsu, the basis of Shinigami power. When you use Zero, you unconsciously molded your Ryatsu, forcing it into your sword until it had nowhere else to go and fired outwards." Naruto's eyes widened. Their sheer amount of jutsu and abilities he would be able to do. He couldn't comprehend it. Kyuubi noticed the boy start to hyperventilate and decided that was enough for today. "Naruto, tomorrow I'll teach you how to use your Ryatsu and demon chakra, but right now you need to sleep. Besides, you're starting to drool on my floor." Naruto left his mindscape in a daze, still amazed by the sheer amount of energy he would have if he trained all three. He flopped onto his bed, for the first time with a smile on his face, and fell fast asleep. The next day at the Ninja Academy. So, Naruto remarked to himself, Mizuki is now classified as a missing nin. They believe that he stole the forbidden scroll, which means I get to keep it. So why do I have a feeling that today is going to be a bad day? Naruto wondered to himself from his seat next to Sasuke. Suddenly, an excited squealing came from the direction of the door. Oh yeah. Fangirls remembered Naruto with a frown. One particularly ugly pink-headed girl yelled at him from across the room. Naruto, get away from Sasuke Kayuan. Sakura screamed at him, running over to punch him in the face for sitting next to her precious Sasuke-kun. As Sakura raised her fist to poke him in the head for sitting next to Sasuke, he moved his head slightly, making the poke miss him completely. As Sakura stood there in shock, wondering how the dead last could dodge her punch so easily, Naruto snapped his hand upwards and grabbed her wrist. Sakura stared in shock. Where there had once been an obnoxious blonde, there now sat a boy with slitted red eyes. With one quick motion, he threw Sakura across the room. Sakura flew through the air. Who is this person? It can't be Naruto. Her train of thought was rudely interrupted as she smashed straight into a wall, leaving a sizable dent where she had hit it. She started to slide down the wall, but before she could, Naruto was right next to her, sword in hand. He grabbed her by the throat and pulled her into a standing position. Ah, Haruno, I'm not through with you yet. Inclined his head toward her so that only she could hear him as he whispered in her ear, if you ever try to touch me again, I will kill you. Naruto let go of her throat and watched in disgust as she slid down the wall, shivering uncontrollably with fear. Naruto walked calmly back to his seat, looked at Sasuke, whose respect had risen for putting Sakura in her place, and said, Hey Sasuke. Sasuke looked back at Sakura, who was shaking in the fetal position, mumbling gibberish. Holy shit dude, I think you broke her. Ino came over to yell at Naruto for doing something like that to Sakura, but stopped when Naruto stared at her, eyes devoid of any emotion except hate. As Naruto opened his mouth, the door burst open and Iruka walked in the door. All right class, sit down and shut. He trailed off as he saw that everyone was simply staring at Naruto. He looked quickly around the room and saw Sakura rolling on the floor, still spouting incoherent sentences. Ugh, he said, looking at the students in the classroom. All right, let's get ready for class, he said, completely ignoring the gibbering Sakura in the corner. As Iruka was about to begin the lesson, he kept getting interrupted by Sakura's mumbling. Will someone please shut her up? He yelled over the noise of the class. Naruto was getting pissed off at how weak Sakura was and sent a small amount of killing intent at her, just enough to snap her out of her trance. As Sakura looked around the room, her eyes landed on Naruto. She immediately screamed and went back into the fetal position, gibbering once more. Naruto just groaned. For the love of... He walked over to Sakura and smacked her between the eyes with the butt of his sword. Her eyes rolled up in her head and she slumped on the floor, unconscious. Naruto left her on the floor and walked calmly back to his seat. Right, said Iruka, resuming his lesson. Today will be the makeup examination for those of you that didn't pass yesterday. Unfortunately, Naruto, you're the only one who didn't pass yesterday. You failed miserably at the target practice, henge, and bunshin. Iruka-sensei, said Naruto, I still can't do regular bunshin, but I read that I could take a battle examination to prove that I am ready to become a shinobi. Iruka was shocked that Naruto had read the rulebook that thoroughly but conceded. All right, Naruto, meet me outside, said Iruka as he shoe-shined outside the classroom. Naruto simply jumped out the window as the class filed out the door to watch the battle. In the sparring arena. Be careful, Iruka-sensei. I won't hold back this time. Iruka simply smiled. Naruto started bouncing on the balls of his feet. Here I come, he yelled. Naruto disappeared from sight, reappearing in front of Iruka to throw a punch at his head. Iruka moved his head to the left, barely dodging. How did Naruto get this good? His train of thought was cut off as Naruto disappeared again. Where is he? Boy, Iruka-sensei, you've gotten slow, said Naruto from behind him. Iruka dropped low and did a sweeping kick to take out the ankles of the boy behind him, but connected with nothing. Iruka's eyes widened slightly at the thought that Naruto could dodge an attack like that so quickly. Suddenly Iruka felt Naruto standing with his back touching Iruka's. He turned his head slightly and whispered in Iruka's ear. Stop holding back. Give me everything you've got. Fight with the intent to kill. Naruto jumped away and turned to face Iruka. Smiling, he turned to face his mentor. Still smiling, he simply said, "Now the fight really begins." Both fighters disappear from the eyes of those who were watching the fight, except perhaps Sasuke's. There was a clash of metal on steel, and Iruka and Naruto both reappeared in the center of the arena, sparks flying off their kunai as each sought for a weak spot in the other's defense. Suddenly, Naruto spotted something. He pulled another kunai from his pouch and held it in his free hand. Naruto began to launch a fury of attacks, making Iruka switch from offensive to defensive in a split second. Naruto kept hammering at Iruka's defense and launched another flurry of blows with his kunai before lashing out with a side kick that sent Iruka flying. Naruto disappeared and reappeared behind Iruka with his kunai at Iruka's throat. "So do I pass?" he asked with a smile on his face. Naruto let the kunai drop to the floor and helped Iruka to his feet. "Yes, Naruto," Iruka answered with a smile on his face. "Come inside, we have to get you your headband." Iruka led Naruto into the classroom while the rest of the class followed, staring in shock. And then an ugly pink-haired banshee decided to break the silence. And then Sakura decided to wake up. "Naruto cheated!" she yelled at a pitch that left all the dogs in the village whimpering and the genin in front of her writhing on the floor, holding their ears and screaming about bursted eardrums. And, well, that was the first chapter. Read and review, and like I said earlier, if you have any ideas you'd like to be in the story, put them in your reviews, and I'll see if I can't fit them into the story. See you guys next chapter. I'll post the next chapter in about a week if I have enough time to write. Okay, everybody, chapter 2 is now up and running. I've decided that Naruto is going to date Hinata soon. If you don't like it, send me your comments and I will personally disregard your opinion. Onward with the story. Naruto smiled as Iruka handed him the headband and headed back to his seat, noticing Saki's jealous look. Smiling, he took his seat next to Sasuke and stared at him. Sasuke stared back. "Is there a reason you're staring at me, or are you gay like most of us suspect?" That shocked Sasuke. The stoic look on his face crumbled and gave way to shock, his eyes somewhat bulging. "You guys think I'm gay?" he shouted to the class. All the guys nodded their heads while the girls screamed that there was no way that their Sasuke-kun could be gay. Naruto continued, "I mean, yeah, of course they think you're gay. I mean, you're always running away from all those fangirls. What other possible reason is there?" For the first time since Naruto had met him, he saw him shudder. "You have no idea, all they want is sex. They think that sneaking into my room and stealing my clothes and cutting off pieces of my hair to show to their friends is a way to show that they love me. Every day they follow me home. I have to henge every time I walk home to avoid being followed." Naruto shuddered. That would be so bad. But in an instant, Sasuke reverted back to his cold exterior, and Naruto saw jealousy flashing in his eyes. "All right, everyone, tomorrow you will meet with your Jonin instructors and will be assigned into 3-man cells." He paused for a second and yelled in his patented big head jutsu, "Now go home." Naruto simply stood from his seat and walked home. Naruto wandered the streets, trying to buy some time before he went back to that hellhole he called his apartment. He looked to the west for a moment, saw the sun setting, and decided it was time to head home. As he walked home, Naruto noticed a chakra signature following him. It was muffled and he couldn't determine who it was following him, but knew from experience that it was a ninja trying to cover their chakra signature. "Well, Saki, do you want to explain why you're following me home?" he asked without turning around. If Sasuke was shocked that Naruto knew he was following, he didn't show it as he jumped down from the building he was on and landed in front. He stared at the blonde for a minute before speaking. "You don't deserve that power," he said with a scowl. "I need that power to kill my older brother and avenge my clan." Naruto frowned. "Now why is it that everything you say pisses me off?" he asked with a genuine look of confusion on his face. He began tapping the fronts of his sandals on the ground. "Well, whatever. If it's a fight you want, then that's something I'm more than willing to do." Sasuke said nothing, simply slipping into his family's taijutsu stance. Naruto scoffed. "You really think that pathetic clan taijutsu can defeat me?" Naruto shook his head. "Whatever, man, it's your funeral." Naruto shot at Sasuke without warning, throwing a punch at his head that Sasuke quickly dodged before countering with his own punch. Naruto knocked the punch away with his arm and kneed his in the gut. Sasuke doubled over, breathless. "How could this dope get so much better than me? He's the dead last." Naruto simply took a few steps back and waited for Sasuke to regain his breath. Sasuke, stop, you'll only get beaten. Sasuke got even madder and charged at Naruto. I see, said Naruto sighing. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. But if you won't listen to reason, I'll just have to beat it into you. Naruto disappeared for a second, reappearing in front of Sasuke before shouting, I'll stop you even if I have to break your arms and legs. Sasuke threw a punch at Naruto, only for Naruto to dodge it with ease. He brought his knee up to catch Naruto in his gut, but Naruto's knee came up and blocked his. Sasuke threw a kick with his right leg, but Naruto's arm caught it and pinned it to his side. Sasuke brought his left leg up in a kick, making his body completely parallel to the ground. Sasuke swung his leg at Naruto's shoulder, hoping to shatter his collarbone. Naruto blocked Sasuke's kick with his forearm, knocking Sasuke off balance. He quickly released Sasuke's leg and jumped backwards before Sasuke could launch another counterattack. Sasuke managed to righten himself in midair and landed lightly on feet. Sasuke ran at Naruto once more, trying again to defeat the blonde. Naruto simply looked down, his eyes hidden by his blonde hair. Fine, he said slowly. Then let's finish this, he shouted, looking up. His blue eyes shone with determination as he looked at Sasuke. Sasuke tried to kick Naruto in the head with a spin kick, only to have it blocked by Naruto's arm. Naruto punched Sasuke in the chest, sending the Avenger back a few feet. Naruto charged at Sasuke and pooched him 3 times in the chest before bringing his right leg up in a spin kick that caught Sasuke in the chin. Naruto pivoted on his left foot, bringing his right foot down lower to cut Sasuke's legs out from under him. As Sasuke was in the air, Naruto palm-heeled him in the chin, knocking him straight up into the air. As Sasuke's body was parallel to the ground, Naruto jumped into the air after him, kneeing him in the back so Sasuke was bent over Naruto's knee. Naruto backflipped over Sasuke and delivered a crescent kick to his gut, sending him slamming into the ground. Naruto fell to the ground and landed next to the Sasuke-shaped crater in the ground. Smiling, he looked down at Sasuke. That's my new technique, Hurricane Kick. Leaning down, he reached out his hand to help Sasuke up, only to have Sasuke knock it away. There's no way I could have lost, shouted Sasuke as he struggled to stand. Has all my training been for nothing? He glared at the ground. How can I hope beat my brother if I'm this weak? He asked softly. Damn it! Shouted and walked away. Naruto watched Sasuke walk away with an impassive face. Only his eyes showed that he was truly sad. Naruto turned and walked away to his apartment. If Sasuke had chosen to look back, he would have seen the blonde drag a hand across his eyes. Naruto's apartment. As Naruto sat on his bed, he thought about Sasuke's problem. To only want one thing in life, but to lack the power to accomplish it, he thought somberly. He rolled over in his bed and fell asleep, his mind still troubled. As Naruto sat up in bed, he felt that something was different, that he turned so that his legs were hanging off the yelped as they touched the cold floor. He stood up, noticing that he was at least 6 inches taller than he had been the day before. And most uncomfortably of all, that none of his clothes fit. Kyuubi, what's going on? Well, you'd better just go look in the mirror. Naruto was nervous. Kyuubi had sounded almost scared. He shook his head. Nothing could scare Kyuubi. He was the king of hell. He went to the mirror and what he saw made his jaw drop. He had gained 7 inches, making him 5 feet 7 inches, lost all traces of baby fat, making his face look more defined, almost regal. He now had a 6-pack and was much stronger than he could ever remember being before. But on top of his head were 2 silver fox ears. His hair was now shot with streaks of silver, but swishing behind him was a silver fox tail. Kyuubi? He thought slowly. What the hell did you do to me? Well, I guess when you absorbed my Ryatsu, it kinda provided a kick to your system and made you grow a lot faster than normal. As for the foxtail and ears, I guess that's because, well, 'cause I'm a fox. Naruto's breathing slowed back to a normal pace. Okay, I'll just hide them with a henge. Naruto put his hands in a ram seal. Henge! There was a poof of smoke and the fox ears and tail were gone. Okay, now all I need is a pair of clothes that fit. Naruto felt his hands move on their own, his body calling out the seals as he made them. Usagi, Ryu, Torai, Hibi, Hitsuji. There was a poof of smoke in front of him and a set of clothes appeared in front of him. A voice whispered in his head. Just for the record, I can do that whenever I want. Naruto quickly checked out the clothes before putting each piece of clothing on. Black shinobi pants with multiple pockets. The pockets had blank scrolls in them that had medical tape at the bottom. There were black combat boots, steel-toed, with slots in the sides to hold kunai. There was a red shirt that showed off his new muscles, and over top of all that there was a black trench coat. Naruto quickly slipped on the clothes but left the trench coat at home. As he jumped over the rooftops on his way to the academy, he reflected on his fight against Irika the day before. Should I have really showed them that much of my power? I wouldn't really worry about it, Kit. What's done is done. Naruto nodded and moved even faster toward the academy. At the academy, Naruto walked into the academy and took his seat next to Sasuke, ignoring the glares from the fangirls. He looked at Sasuke, whose wounds had healed up rather quickly. Naruto smiled at Sasuke, and then all hell burst loose. Sasuke smiled back. Naruto yelled and ran under the desk. Sasuke smiled. It's a sign of the apocalypse. Everyone to the bunkers. Everyone started screaming and running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And, I hate chickens, those beady little eyes. Irika burst open the classroom door. All right, everyone sit down and shut up. Everyone quieted down and went back to their seats. Today, he continued, you will be split into your 3-man teams. Your Jonin instructors will be arriving shortly, so I'll announce the teams now. Naruto laid his head on the desk, waiting until his name was called. Amazingly, no one had noticed the changes yet. Team 7, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto raised his head in acknowledgement. Hinata looked at his face and almost fainted. The blush on her cheeks at the moment could make a tomato run away in shame. Uchiha Sasuke. Irika continued. Sasuke merely nodded his head. And Hyuga Hinata. Hinata gasped and actually fainted at the news. Nobody seemed to notice except Naruto. He smiled faintly and looked back at Irika. Team 8, Oburaime Shino, Inuzuka Kiba, and, he looked down at the list and visibly cringed, Haruno Sakura. Both Kiba and the normally stoic Shino slammed their heads down on the desks, cursing whatever Kami had seen fit to punish them so severely. There was a giant sneeze that shook the academy building. Kami. He sneezed again and in a ringing voice exclaimed, I fucking hate flu season. The academy, 3 hours later. Naruto groaned for probably the 3rd time that hour. Man, this sucks. Everyone else's senseis came to get them 2 hours ago. Sasuke nodded. Hinata was still unconscious. Naruto glacéed over at her before looking back to Sasuke. Do you think we should do something about her? He asked, jerking his head toward Hinata. Sasuke shook his head. Just leave her there. Naruto just shrugged his shoulders and put his head back onto the desk. Suddenly the door opened and a silver-haired Jonin stuck his head inside. You guys Team 7? He asked. Naruto and Sasuke just nodded. Roof, 5 minutes. Naruto sighed. With a grin at Sasuke, he slung Hinata over his shoulder and shoe-shined SP to the roof. Leave poor emo Sasuke to walk to the roof all by himself. On the roof. Naruto appeared on the roof in a swirl of leaves and set Hinata on the bench next to him and tried to wake her up. He tried shaking her, he tried shouting at her. Hell, he even poured water on her. Finally, in a fit of desperation, he said, making his voice high in terror, Hinata, help me. The evil pink hair bitch is trying to rape me. Hinata sat bolt upright, instantly awake, with her Byakugan blazing in a Kumplete Juken stance. Stupid banshee, stay away from Naruto, she shouted, only to find that there was no one else on the roof except for her and Naruto. She cocked her head to the side in confusion, but before she could ask a question, Naruto answered her. Well, I couldn't find any other way to wake you up, so I sorta had to make something up, he said, chuckling nervously and scratching the back of his head with his hand. Hinata sat upright and nodded. Sasuke opened the door and stepped out onto the roof, squinting at the sudden sunlight. He walked and took his seat next to Naruto and waited for their sensei to appear. Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves, much like Naruto had. With his trademark eye smile, he said, I'm bored, come here tomorrow around noon. Yane. Before either Naruto or Sasuke could stop him, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto shook his head slowly. Do you mean to tell me that we waited 3 hours for this guy, and then he just up and leaves? Sasuke nodded slowly. Naruto erupted in a fit of cussing that made Hinata turn pink and put her hand over her mouth in astonishment at some of the words he used. Naruto slammed his fist into the wall, and for a second nothing happened. Then the entire wall crumbled away under the force of his blow. Screw this, I'm leaving. He disappeared in another swirl of leaves, leaving Hinata and Sasuke to wonder where he had gone. Training Gown 7. Naruto pummeled at the targets he had set up with a rain of blows that shook the earth that the posts were slammed into. With a final heavy kick, he snapped the 3-foot-thick post he'd tied the dummy to and sent it skidding across the training ground. Why was he so angry? He didn't understand it. I can answer that, Kit, rang the Kyuubi's voice in his head. While our minds and body are connected, our emotions are as well. I am angry at that man as well, and so it affects your anger as well. Naruto now nodded, understanding his anger now. He focused his anger into a point and used it to make himself stronger, felt it draining away as he pummeled dummy after dummy. He finished off attaining dummy with a rotating palm shock to the chest. Stopped. Feeling a familiar chakra signature behind him, he turned around and asked, Hinata, what are you doing here? Hinata stepped out from behind the tree she was hiding behind and stood in front of Naruto, fidgeting her fingers. Frowning, he took her hands and put by her sides. Put his finger on her chin and pushed her up so that she locked eyes with him. He smiled. That's much better, he said. Now, he said, stepping back, why are you here? You seem to be in a bad mood, so I decided to come after you, she stuttered out. Naruto frowned. She had a serious confidence problem. He would have to help remedy that. Once she had seen him frown, she started stammering out apologies, thinking that she had done something to offend him. Naruto held up a hand to stop her stammering. He gave her a warm smile and held out his hand to her. Hinata, would you like to train with me? Hinata nodded, unable to speak at the thought that Naruto would ask her to train with him. Hinata, the best way to determine what I need to teach you is to figure out what you already know, so I want you to attack me. Hinata nodded shakily and ran to attack him. He dodged his first few strikes easily and could tell that her heart just wasn't into attacking him. He grabbed her hand as she attacked and set it by her side. Hinata! She squeezed her eyes closed and braced herself for the hit to come. The hit that always came when she didn't do something right, but the hit didn't come. She opened her eyes to find Naruto face to face with her with a look of concern on his face. Hinata, are you all right? Hinata was surprised. You aren't going to hit me? Naruto's eyes widened and he asked in confusion. Hit you? Why would I do something like that? Hinata shook her head in confusion. But I failed. She couldn't understand. Naruto's eyes narrowed. This girl had been badly mistreated. Hinata, he said softly, causing her to open her eyes. I would never hit you, not ever. He straightened out to normal height and began again. Come at me and fight. Hinata ran forward again, this time with more conviction in her eyes, and Naruto was hard-pressed to dodge many of her strikes. He held up his hand, his assessment done. Your style of Juken is far different from any other style I have seen before, and I'm hard-pressed to figure out something that would help you. What are you talking about? There's only one style of Juken. Naruto shook his head. There is one style, but everyone uses it differently. It's the same style, but everyone adapts it to their own style of fighting. He saw her nod and continued. Your style involves quick strike to vital body parts before spinning away and stirking at another section of the body. Your style appears to be the most effective style I have ever seen. Yours allows you strike multiple vulnerable points all over your opponents while keeping out of the way of your opponent's attacks. Naruto smiled. That's why there's only one technique that I can think of right now that would complement your style. It's called the chakra scalpel. It's an incredibly damaging ability when used in conjunction with the Juken. The chakra scalpel cut through the inside organs without rupturing the skin outside the body. Coupled with the Juken already striking vital points, it would do massive damage to your enemy's internal organs. Hinata was in shock. She would never have thought of combining the chakra scalpel with the Juken stance. What was more impressive was that no one else had either. Now, prepare yourself. If you can land 5 hits on me, then I'll teach it to you, he said, slipping into a fighting stance. He would teach it to her even if she couldn't, but she didn't need to know that yet. And finally Hinata came at him with the intent to kill. Chapter 3. Naruto smiled, so Hinata had finally come at him with the intent to kill. He dodged her first few strikes by simply bending his body, but he knew she was just getting warmed up. She suddenly dropped into a leg sweep to try and take his feet out, but he jumped into the air and dodged it. She thrust her palm into the air to hit him in the chin, but he leaned back and was able to dodge it. She shot her palm to catch him in the chest, but Naruto twisted his body in midair and dodged the strike. He threw a kick at Hinata, but she spun away to the right and closed multiple tenketsu on his arms. He grunted in pain and jumped away, his arms numb from the elbows down. As she raced forward to strike again, he forced chakra to his heels and jumped straight up into the air. Wanting to buy some time so his tenketsu could reopen, he spun his foot and revealed a hidden kunai in the sole of his sandal. It flew into the air where he caught it in his mouth. He landed on the ground with a slight thud. He smiled. Hinata had no idea how strong she really was. She could see the tenketsu points in the middle of a fight. She could dodge his hits and counterattack with her own easily. She even made him unable to use his arms. She just needed to know how strong she really was. He tossed the kunai to the side and called for her to stop. He was able to slightly move his arms again and used the other arm to unseal the tenketsu points on each of his arms. He may not have the Byakugan, but he knew exactly where the tenketsu were. He had been attacked by Hyugas many times before. He called Hinata next to him and had her sit down with him. "Hinata, you're insanely strong." She shook her head. "No, Tusan says I'm nothing but a waste of space, that I'll never amount to anything." Naruto's eyes narrowed and he looked her in the eyes. "Hinata, don't listen to him. I fought Sasuke yesterday and he wasn't able to land a single hit on me before I took him down. But you, Hinata," he said, incredibly proud of her. "You managed to land 6 hits on both my arms and forced me to use my mouth to attack." She blushed at his praise and turned away. Naruto pulled out one of the scrolls in his pocket and opened it. He bit his thumb and smeared blood down the scroll. There was a poof, and when the smoke cleared, it revealed a bento box. "Nah, Hinata, you want some lunch?" he asked, holding the box in front of her. She shook her head nervously. "Oh no, you see I'm not all that hun-dash." She was interrupted when her stomach growled loudly. She gave a squeak and covered her face in embarrassment. Naruto laughed and opened his bento box. As soon as she looked up, he popped a piece of dango in her mouth. He laughed even harder at the look of astonishment on her face. She chewed and swallowed it, his eyes lighting up at its taste. "Wow, Naruto-kun, this is great. Where did you get this?" He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "Actually, I made it." Hinata's eyes opened wide that he could cook so well. He rose to his feet and held out his hand to help her up. "Well, Lady Hinata, as much of a pleasure as this has been, it seems to be getting late." Hinata turned to look at the sun and saw that it had sunk very low in the sky. Hinata gave a gasp. When had it gotten so late? "Hinata, come on. I'll walk you home." He turned and started to walk towards the Hyuga compound, Hinata following after him. He tossed her a pair of chopsticks that she caught with surprised hands. "Eat up," he said, turning to her with a smile on his face. Hinata opened the box and started to eat the food as they walked to the Hyuga compound, occasionally commenting on this and that. As they reached the main gates, she pushed open the gates and gave the bento box back to Naruto. "Goodbye, Hinata-chan," he said softly as she walked off, so she wouldn't hear him. Suddenly, Hyuga clansmen poured out of the building and surrounded him. "Demon, how dare you come here with Hinata-sama? We'll kill you for what you did to our clan members," shouted the lead Hyuga. Naruto's cerulean blue eyes turned hard and became like shards of ice. "All right, if you and the rest of the village thinks of me as a demon, then I'll show you just what a demon can do." He dashed forward and planted his fist in the Hyuga's stomach, sending him flying into a tree where he slumped, unconscious. Naruto stood back and slipped into a fighting stance. Hinata turned to see Naruto being attacked, and could only look on in fear as she saw him slip into a defensive stance. Naruto deflected a punch from the nearest Hyuga and hit in the gut with an elbow before transferring his motion into a spinning kick that caught another Hyuga in the back of the head. He swept another's legs out from under him before hitting him with a palm shock to the chest, sending him flying back into the Hyugas behind him. Naruto sent another into the air with an uppercut to the chin where he slammed him back into the ground with an axe kick to the sternum. The man's eyes rolled back into his head and he slid into unconsciousness. Though he didn't look at Naruto was being very careful in this fight. If he took a single hit, it would allow them all to attack him while he was numbed. A Hyuga dashed forward and tried to punch him, but Naruto sidestepped and kicked him in the side of the knee, breaking his leg. Another tried to attack him from behind, but he ducked under the blow to face his opponent. He grabbed the man's wrist and gave it a sharp 90-degree twist, effectively breaking it. As the man yelled in pain, Naruto sent a palm to the man's elbow, snapping it. As the man fell screaming to the ground, Naruto kicked him in the chest, breaking at least 6 ribs and sending the man flying into the tree behind him. Things broke, they weren't branches. As Naruto stood back up, a Hyuga tried to hit him in the heart with a juken only to find that his target had disappeared. Below his there was a cry of Jitenjiku Kagera. 1. The man looked down just in time to have a rotating heel kick catch him in the forehead. The man stumbled backwards from the force of the blow and gave the boy below him enough time to jump upright. The blonde followed with a series of punches to the man's chest before ending with a vicious right-handed cross that sent him skidding across the ground. Naruto slipped into his fighting stance once again before a loud voice interrupted them. "Stop!" shouted a loud voice as Hayashi Hyuga came striding across the courtyard. All the Hyugas present parted before him, but Naruto just stared at him with cold hatred. "So this is the man that made Hinata so afraid. I'll make him pay." "What are you doing here, boy?" Hayashi asked in a cold voice as he looked up Naruto with disdain in his eyes. Naruto anger flared as he stared at this man, but he restrained it and bowed. "I was bringing your daughter home, sir." Hayashi nodded, but he said, "Where is Hanabi then?" Naruto was confused. "Your other daughter, sir," said Naruto. Hayashi scoffed. "What daughter? I have no other daughter." Naruto's anger flared to a new height and he was barely able to grind out, "As you say, sir." He turned and walked down the street, away from the Hyuga compound. Naruto walked down the streets of Konoha, pissed beyond belief. "Fucking asshole," he shouted into the air. "If I was stronger I could have fought him, but I'm too weak." "Damn it!" he shouted, kicking a nearby tree and watching in satisfaction as it splintered under the blow. The next day, on top of the academy building, Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke all sat on the benches staring at their sensei. "All right," said Kakashi, "today we're going to learn something about each other. So tell me your likes, dislikes, and dreams. I'll go first so you guys know what to do. My name is Hatake Kakashi. I like many things, but also dislike many others. As for dreams, well, I have plenty of hobbies." His team stared dumbfounded, but inwardly they were all screaming the same thing. All we learned was his name. "Okay, you first, timid dark girl." "My name is Hyuga Hinata. I like..." She was tempted to say Naruto-kun but decided against it. "Cinnamon buns, training, and helping people. I dislike people who judge on a person's potential instead of their ability to grow. And my dream is to unite both the main and branch families." "You next, emo boy." "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I like some things but dislike many others. My dream, no, my ambition is to kill a certain man." "I hope it's not me," said Naruto in a mock-scared voice. Sasuke growled, "I'm thinking of changing it to you." "Okay, Blondie, you next." Naruto frowned at the nickname but continued nevertheless. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen and training. I dislike bigoted bastards who blame people for things they had no control over. Oh, and the council members, don't forget them." "Where was I? Oh yeah, and my dream is to become Hokage." Kakashi thought to himself, "Okay, so I've got 2 Jujutsus on my team. One belongs to an Avenger. But the girl, I don't know what to make of her, as well as the blonde kid. Okay, everyone meet me at the training ground 7 tomorrow at 6:00 sharp. We'll be doing survival training, so don't eat breakfast. You'll just throw up, ja and e." With that, he teleported off to who knows where. Naruto stood up and stretched. "Well, I'm off to train. You want to come with me, Hinata?" Hinata blushed that he would ask her to train with him, but nodded her head. Sasuke stood up and said slowly, "I'd like to train as well." Naruto nodded. "But you'll have to get there by yourself." Naruto walked over to Hinata and put an arm on her shoulder. Hinata blushed at the sudden contact but remained conscious. "See ya in a bit, Sasuke." The leaves started to swirl around Naruto. The leaves suddenly burst into flames. When the flames disappeared, there was no Naruto or Hinata. Sasuke stared open-mouthed at the spot Naruto and Hinata were just standing and said, "Damn, that was badass." Training Ground 7. There was a burst of flame and Naruto and Hinata appeared in the middle of the training field. Hinata still clutching Naruto in fear. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. "Gomen, Hinata." She slowly released him before asking, "Naruto-kun, what was that?" "HM? Oh, that was a burning leaf Shushin. Something that I've been working on for a while now." Naruto sat on the ground. Pulling one of the storage scrolls from his pockets, he motioned for her to sit down next to him. He unfolded the scroll and unsealed it. There were multiple poofs and weapons appeared on the scroll. "Hinata, I want you to pick the weapon you'd like to use, and we'll see if we can't find someone to teach you the basics." "I can teach weapon styles." "I know you know a lot weapon styles, but she doesn't know about you, so I have to make it seem like I can find her a teacher." There was a silence that Naruto took for Kyuubi being done talking. Hinata's eyes scanned the various weapons until she found something she liked, but when she saw it her eyes lit up and Naruto knew she had chosen her weapon. Hinata picked up the large scythe and planted it in the ground next to her as she stood. Naruto looked at her weapon choice and remarked, "A scythe, huh? You know, a person's weapon determines what they wish to emulate. That scythe is large and few have mastered it, so if you were to master it, it would make you stand out and be noticed." Hinata's eyes widened as Naruto's words rang true inside of her. Once she mastered this weapon, then no one would ever be able to pass her off as a nobody again. However, for the meantime, he continued, "You don't know how to use it, so I suggest you seal it inside this until you learn how to use it. Otherwise, it will only impede your movements," he said, tossing her a storage scroll. Hinata caught it and opened it, bit her thumb and ran the blood down the scroll. Chakra leaked out of the scroll and wrapped around the scythe in her hand. There was a poof as it disappeared into the scroll, then the scroll rolled shut. Hinata picked up the scroll from the ground and placed it in her jacket pocket as Sasuke walked into the training ground. "Took you long enough to get here," Naruto shouted to Sasuke from across the training ground. As Sasuke got closer, Naruto resumed talking. "We're picking weapons to use." Hinata picked a scythe. "I've already got a sword, which leaves you." Sasuke looked over the weapons in the scroll before picking up a long spear. Hinata voiced a question that had been nagging at her since Naruto had opened the scroll. "Naruto-kun, where did you get all those weapons?" "Oh, that was the easy part," said Naruto laughing. "I just henged into Sasuke and walked into the nearest weapons store, and they gave me everything I picked out for free, instead of 4 times the normal price." He grumbled the last part so his teammates wouldn't hear. "Sasuke, you should do that sometime. Just walk into the store and be like, 'I'd like everything you have in stock, please.' I'm sure they'd give it to you free of charge." Naruto laughed while Sasuke just shook his head. "Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Here," he said, tossing Sasuke a storage scroll. Sasuke sealed his spear in the scroll while Naruto gave him the same explanation he gave Hinata. Sasuke nodded. "That makes sense, I guess. Otherwise our opponent can just use our weapons against us." Naruto nodded. "Everyone, I've copied down a few jutsu that I'd like you to try and learn." He didn't mention that he'd gotten these from the Forbidden Scroll, which he only took after making sure that the Hokage had a second one. "But before I give you guys those jutsu to practice, I want you to learn Kage Bunshin, which is essentially a solid clone with reconnaissance abilities, so it will greatly speed up your training if you use it while you train." Hinata and Sasuke nodded, giving Naruto the signal to continue. "The clones give you back all the information that they gathered after they are dispelled, so if you're training with a lot of them, dispel them one by one, because if you don't, the rush of information will cause you to black out. Basically, if you had 3 clones doing the same jutsu, as soon as you dispel them, the information on how to do the jutsu will be in your head, because you basically just did it 3 times. Naruto grinned as he watched Hinata and Sasuke's eyes widen as they thought of the possibilities. "First put your hands in the ram seal, then focus your chakra as you imagine it splitting away from you in as many clones as you want. The clones split your chakra amongst themselves evenly, so the less clones you have, the higher their durability is. Only make one for right now. As your chakra reserves grow, you'll be able to do more and more easily." Sasuke and Hinata nodded and set to work on learning the Kage Bunshin. Sasuke practiced for a while before coming over to Naruto. "Naruto, why do you want to teach me the Kage Bunshin?" Naruto smiled. Well, Mr. Avenger, you're gonna need power if you want to kill that brother of yours, aren't you? Sasuke's eyes widened as he realized that Naruto knew about Itachi. He guessed that wasn't the real reason that Naruto was teaching him, but decided to let it go and walked away. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. Boy, if he ever found out that I was training him because I thought he had talent. His ego would blow up so big I don't think I'd ever be able to deflate it. Naruto walked off by himself and reviewed one of the jutsu he'd copied from the brought with him. Opening the scroll, he breathed Rasengan. Jitenjiku Kage Shige. Roughly translated to rotating shadow kick, the user ducks below the punch or kick and performs a handstand, then allows the weight of their body to pull them into doing a heel drop on their opponent.
Cliffhanger no Jutsu.
Sorry for pulling the cliffhanger on you guys, but remember, if you are able, review my story. I do accept anonymous reviews. The more reviews I get, the faster you guys get updates. I want reviews, damn it. Crawls in the corner and cries about not getting enough reviews. Naruto grinned. This certainly was a powerful jutsu. Notes on elemental infusion. Elemental chakra must be molded as the Rasengan is being created. Trying to add elements after the jutsu has been formed will cancel the jutsu. No shinobi to date has been able to infuse elements into the Rasengan. Naruto frowned at this last bit, so it would indeed be a very difficult jutsu to do. Naruto rolled up the scroll and slipped it into his pocket. Naruto slid his hands into a ram seal, and with a shouted, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, 30 clones flickered into existence next to him. He started to channel chakra into his hand, only for it dissipate. He frowned and tried again, all of his clones swirling as well. The chakra started to swirl again, before dissipating again. He yelled in frustration before slipping the scroll out of his pocket. He scanned the words with his finger before finding a passage that could explain it. The Rasengan requires precise chakra control to do, as you must swirl it in different ways. Once you have mastered your chakra control, there are multiple steps you can do to help control the chakra inside the Rasengan. Naruto looked at the scroll again before rolling it up and placing it back in his pocket. If I can't learn the Rasengan yet, there must be other jutsu that I can do. He decided to check the scroll again once he got home and decided to go one with his training routine.
Kage Bunshin no Jutsu.
Hinata and Sasuke felt the giant chakra spike and ran over to see what was wrong, but all they could do was gasp at what they saw. Naruto stood in the center of a giant circle of shadow clones. Hinata easily counted over 300. The clones all pulled out kunai and charged at Naruto with a deafening roar. Hinata screamed. There was no way he could defeat that many. Naruto would be killed. She ran forward to help him, but Sasuke held out an arm to stop her. Wait, he said, watch him. One of the clones threw its kunai at Naruto. Naruto spun out of the way and grabbed the kunai by its handle, throwing it back at the clone and catching it in the chest. 6 clones rushed Naruto from behind, but he flipped over them, grabbing one of their kunai and ramming it in the back of the clone's skull. He took the kunai and blurred away, reappearing behind a pocket of clones. There was a series of poofs as the clones disappeared. Hinata and Sasuke could only watch in amazement as he systematically destroyed all of the clones. As the last clone disappeared, Naruto fell to the ground, panting. He started to push himself off the ground, only for his arms to give way and make him collapse onto the ground. He tried to push himself off the ground, only for a hail of kunai to pin him to the ground by the edges of his shirt. Sasuke looked down at him. When you can take out all of those kunai, then you can get up. Sasuke started to walk away. As soon as Sasuke was out of sight, Naruto realized something. Sasuke, you pinned both my arms to the ground. Naruto turned his head and saw Hinata standing next to him. Ano, Hinata, could you take out these kunai? Hinata was still laughing at the sight of Naruto pinned to the ground, but came over and pulled out the kunai. Naruto just laid there for a while, trying to gain back his stamina. Finally, Naruto was able to prop himself up on one AR, laughing at his own weakness. Hinata reached down a hand and helped him up, blushing at the contact. Naruto pulled himself upright, leaning heavily against Hinata for support. She was able to hold him up and walked over to a tree so he could lean on it. As she set him at the tree, he slumped into a sitting position at the base of the tree. He laughed. Pretty weak, huh? Hinata shook her head. No way, Naruto-kun, that was amazing. He laughed again. But look at me now. I'm completely beat. Hinata just sat down next to him. Naruto, why did my clan attack you yesterday? Naruto's eyes clouded over in sorrow. They attacked me over something I had no control over. What, Naruto? She asked, genuinely concerned. He shook his head. I can't tell you yet, not till I'm sure you're not like all the rest. Hinata was confused but let it go, deciding that he'd tell her when he was ready. Naruto gave a giant yawn, stretching his arms over his head. He set them back down by his sides, his eyelids half closed. His last thought was, I must have overdone it. As he awoke, he noticed he was laying on something but wasn't sure what it was. He sat back up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He looked over to see Hinata asleep next him. Looking around, he realized that they were still in the same spot where he fell asleep. He looked at the sun, or rather the moon. His eyes widened. How long had he been asleep? He shook Hinata to wake her up, but she was fast asleep. He knew he couldn't let Hayashi see him bring her home this late. He gathered her in his arms and set off towards the Hyuga compound. Naruto leapt over the fence to the compound, searching the filled rooms for an empty one that could be Hinata's. As he scanned the compound, he saw that there was a room that was unoccupied. Jumping towards it, he passed directly over a squad of guards. Naruto snorted, all-seeing eye my ass. Naruto got to the window and immediately knew it was Hinata's. He opened the window and slipped quietly inside. He laid her on the bed. Taking her arms from around his neck, he whispered to her, "Good night, Hinata-chan." He jumped out the window, closing it as he left. The bridge, 6 a.m. Sasuke and Hinata stood on the bridge, waiting for Naruto. Naruto came walking up to the bridge, carrying apples. He tossed one to Sasuke and the other to Hinata. They both looked at him strangely. "What?" he said, his mouth full of apple. He swallowed it and continued talking. "This is a survival test, right? So we're gonna need all the energy we can get." They both nodded and ate their apples. 2 hours later, Kakashi appeared in a poof of smoke, rubbing the back of his head. "Sorry I'm late, guys. This fish was drowning and my mask was glued to my face." They all stared at him like he was insane before Naruto spoke up. "That was the worst excuse I have ever heard, and I've heard some of your other ones. Now, today's test is going to be a bell test. Yo, determine if you get to become Genin." Hinata opened her mouth to ask a question before Naruto answered her. "If they let every Genin graduate, then we'd have a surplus of low-level ninja. The ones who graduate the academy are those who have the ability to become Genin." Hinata nodded and Kakashi continued. "My test, however, has a 66% fail rate." Before anyone could yell at him, he held up a hand. "There are 2 bells. The one who doesn't get a bell goes back to the academy. You have until noon. Meet me at Training Ground 7. With that, Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves. Knowing there was no time to waste, Naruto grabbed both Hinata's and Sasuke's shoulders and shoo-shined to the training ground. As they approached the training ground, Hinata and Sasuke dashed to their hiding places. Kakashi reviewed their hiding spots with a critical eye. They've hidden themselves well. This team might actually prove a dish. His train of thought was broken by Naruto shouting, "Hey, fight me!" Kakashi looked at Naruto like he was crazy. "You do know ninjas are about stealth, don't you?" he asked. Ninja Lesson 1. Taijutsu. Naruto threw a punch at Kakashi only for him to block it. He threw his leg into a spinning kick only to have Kakashi duck under it and get behind him. "Never let an enemy get behind you," he said with an evil glint in his eye. Konoha Secret Taijutsu. Senin Goroshi. Naruto jumped 20 feet in the air, screaming in pain, only to disappear with a poof. Kakashi's visible eye widened. "This kid knows Kage Bunshin?" He scanned around for his enemy only to hear a shout. "Above!" Kakashi jumped back as Naruto slammed his fist into the ground where he had just been standing. The ground shuddered under the impact and a fissure split the earth. Naruto smiled and turned to face Kakashi. "I like you, you're actually a challenge." He began making hand sign at speed Kakashi wasn't able to follow. He ended on Torai and called out the name of his jutsu, Atsusa Nijimizu 1. The air around Naruto began to waver and Naruto's outline began to flicker and then faded away. Kakashi, thinking it was a genjutsu, put his hands in a ram seal and shouted, "Kai!" Norat's voice sounded from all around him. "Don't bother. This is no genjutsu." Kakashi felt a sudden blow to the back of his head and stumbled forward, only to feel a knee impact him in the stomach. He stumbled forward, the wind knocked out of him. How is he doing this? Kakashi didn't have any more time to think as he felt a blow catch him in the chin, sending him spiraling into the air. Kakashi groaned. There was no way he could substitute without knowing where he was being attacked from. He heard Naruto's voice again. This is my variation of Kirigakure no Jutsu. It warps the heat around the target, causing the air to waver around them. Hence its name, Heat Mirage. Kakashi and Naruto whispered the name of the jutsu at the same time. Kakashi's visible eye widened as he realized the nature of the jutsu. If it's heat, then this should fix it. Making multiple hand signs, he called out the name of his jutsu. No Jutsu. 2. Rain started to pour from the sky and Naruto's jutsu warped and disappeared. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as he saw his jutsu cancel but quickly shook it off. Thinking quickly, he dashed back into the woods, searching for a hiding spot. Kakashi watched Naruto dash into the forest, keeping an eye on his chakra signature. His eyes widened as it suddenly vanished. No way, he's able to mask it completely? Kakashi thought. This is one interesting kid. Naruto dashed through the forest, cursing himself for being so careless. As voice rang in his head, "Idiot. How could you think you could take him on alone? He isn't a jonin for nothing." Naruto growled. "You need to go find the others. Together you might be able to get those bells." Naruto protested inside his head. "But there are only 2 bells. One of us has to go back to the academy if we don't get one." "Listen, I don't think the test is about getting the bells at all. I think it's about working as a team." Naruto's eyes widened as he realized the true meaning of the test. Suddenly he felt Kakashi's chakra spike and dashed towards it. Hinata was moving very cautiously through the forest, looking for Naruto. Hearing a rustle behind her, she turned quickly but saw nothing. Seeing something in the edge of her eyes, she spun quickly to see Kakashi standing in front of her. "Hello, Hinata." The air began to shift slyly, signaling the start of the genjutsu, and yet Hinata couldn't look away. Suddenly Naruto dropped down from the treetops and landed in front of Hinata, shielding her eyes. "Naruto-kun," whispered Hinata before fainting. Naruto gently set her against the tree before turning to face Kakashi. Kakashi, taking advantage of the distraction, launched a kick at Naruto. The kick caught Naruto in the side, sending him flying into a tree. The tree cracked and there was a Naruto-shaped print in the tree. Naruto stood back up, brushing tree bits off himself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of metal-back gloves like Kakashi had. Grinning, he pulled the gloves over his hands and slipped into a fighting stance. He rushed at Kakashi, throwing multiple punches with Kakashi either dodging, blocking, or redirecting them. Frustrated, he jumped back. Pulling back his fist, he channeled chakra to his hand. As he channeled his chakra, he began to make hand signs. He finished, grabbing his wrist. Flames burst to life on his hand. He held his hand to his face, the flames flickering. "This is my very own original jutsu. Inferno Tenohira? 3. Inside his head, Kyubi snorted, "KH. More like my original jutsu." He flashed throat seals again, the flames on his hand flaring brightly. Kakashi's visible eyes widened. He'd seen those seals before. Naruto called out his jutsu. "Atsusa Naijimizu." The air around Naruto warped again and he disappeared. But the jutsu seemed to have been amplified by Naruto's Inferno Tenohira. The air around Kakashi distorted and all he could see was vague outlines of things. He started to flash through seals for a water jutsu but was suddenly stopped by a searing pain in his chest. Naruto's jutsu dispersed and Kakashi looked down to see the blonde's hand slammed into his chest. There was a poof and Naruto's eyes widened in horror. Kage Bunshin. Naruto tried to jump away but found a pair of arms pin him down. Hinata's eyes flickered open and she saw Naruto being attacked by Kakashi. "I can't be afraid, not anymore." She ran at Kakashi and got him in the arms with her juken and he jumped away from Naruto, his arms hanging uselessly by his side. Hinata grabbed Naruto, who had knocked unconscious by a kick to the head, and jumped away. As Hinata jumped through the trees, Naruto slowly began to move. Hinata stopped and set him against the tree they were on. "Naruto-kun, you're awake." Naruto nodded his head and turned to face her. Kakashi's tough, we won't be able to beat him by ourselves, so we need to work together. And as much as I hate to say it, we need Sasuke's help too. Hinata tilted her head. But if we don't get a bell, we'll be sent back to the academy. Naruto shook his head. Hinata, I don't think this test is about the bells at all. I think it's about teamwork. Hinata nodded at Naruto's reasoning. They were about to start looking for Sasuke when they heard the sound of heavy fighting. Naruto frowned. We need to hurry. I think Kakashi found Sasuke first. With Sasuke. Sasuke threw a kick at Kakashi but was easily blocked. Sasuke growled and began making seals for his jutsu but was interrupted as Naruto and Hinata dropped down in front of him. The both struck at Kakashi, Naruto surprisingly imitating the Juken. Kakashi was surprised that Naruto and Hinata were working together, and even more surprised that they were both using the Juken. Naruto dropped low and cut Kakashi's legs out from under him as Hinata caught him in the chin with a rising palm. As Kakashi flew into the air, Naruto jumped up after him. Appearing above him, Naruto slammed Kakashi in the stomach with a spiraling fist, sending him plummeting towards the ground. Hinata dashed under the falling Kakashi and slammed him in the back with a double palm. Naruto reached for the bells, but a sudden ringing stopped him. There was a poof and Kakashi disappeared. Naruto stared in wonder. It was a shadow clone all along? Kakashi came strolling out of the forest, looking no worse off than if he'd been walking through a park. Sorry guys, but you failed to get the bells. There was a sudden movement and Naruto was tied to the training stump. Sasuke and Hinata stared in shock that someone could be so fast. After lunch you will get another attempt at the bells, but no one untie Naruto or give him any food. He gave Sasuke and Hinata 2 bento boxes and left. Hinata opened her box and handed Naruto an onigiri. Naruto grabbed it with a hand but couldn't bring it to his mouth. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed it up and caught it in his mouth. Thanks, Hinata, he said between mouthfuls. Sasuke just stared and shouted. What the hell, man? Didn't Kakashi just say not to give Naruto food? Naruto nodded but said, if we want to fight Kakashi, we have to be at full strength, and those apples I brought you guys are not going to do it. There was a loud explosion and Kakashi appeared in front of Naruto, his face filled with fury. What the fuck did I just say? He yelled, the exact picture of an angry god. You, all, pass. Naruto's mouth hung open and Hinata fell on her face. All the teams I had before you guys never passed because they did exactly what I said, like mindless drones. Remember this, in the ninja world, those that don't follow the rules and regulations are called trash. But those who abandon their comrades are worse than that, they're scum. Kakashi cut Naruto from the post and helped him stand up. Congratulations, you are now Team 7, Hokage's Tower. The group looked away as the daimyo's wife crushed the cat to her face. She turned and handed the Hokage money for the mission and then left the room. Naruto sighed exhaustedly. They should turn capturing that cat into a C rank at least. We spent 4 hours chasing after that thing. Everyone nodded and the Hokage laughed loudly before checking over a list of available D rank missions. Let's see. There's weeding gardens, washing windows, digging potatoes, or... There was a loud shout of Tora, and the Hokage sighed, capturing the daimyo's cat. Naruto shook his head. Jisan, there's no reason for us to be doing these missions. These are chores that normal villagers can do. The Hokage opened his mouth to argue, but shut it again when he found that Naruto's reasoning was correct. He dug in his bin again and pulled a C-rank scroll from its depths. Turning around, he handed it to Kakashi. Your mission will be to guard Tazuna-san on his way back to Wave. He fears he will be attacked by bandits or the Ives. Tazuna-san, you can come in now, he called. The door opened to reveal an old man who smelled of alcohol, which was proven by the large bottle of sake in his hand. He turned to the Hokage with a surprised look on his face. These are the ninja that are going to protect me? They all look wet behind the ears. Especially the one with the blonde hair. He looks like an idiot. Naruto simply smiled and said, that being said, I can kill you in any one of 8 vital targets right now before you'd even be able to blink. Tazuna's eyes widened and Kakashi looked at Naruto. You do realize that killing the client is against the mission, right? Everyone head home. We'll meet in the morning at the bridge around 6 a.m. He disappeared in a swirl of leaves, leaving everyone to wonder where he'd gone. Naruto turned around to face Hinata. Hinata, do you want to go train before the mission? Hinata nodded and he took her hand before disappearing in a burning Shushin. Sasuke sighed and walked out the door as the Hokage stared. No one's been able to do that in years. Training Ground 7. Naruto and Hinata appeared in the middle of the training ground, Hinata a lot calmer than last time. Naruto smiled and drew his sword. Now we'll train with weapons. Hinata nodded and pulled out her scroll, unsealing the scythe within it. Naruto spun his sword, slipping into a crouching position with the blade of the sword resting on his index and middle fingers. Hinata grasped the scythe with both hands, facing the blade towards Naruto. Naruto slipped out of his stance as he remembered something. Focusing chakra to his fingertips, he coated the edge of his sword in chakra, blunting it. The chakra dissipated and Naruto's sword appeared the same as before. He motioned for Hinata to give him her scythe. He blunted the edge of her scythe with chakra and handed it back to her. What did you do, Naruto-kun? I blunted the edges with chakra so that we don't cut ourselves to pieces while we train with them, but they can still break bones, so be careful. They both slipped into their stances again as a wind blew through the training ground, rustling the trees. They both watched a single leaf float to the ground, waiting for it to land. As the leaf touched the ground, both Naruto and Hinata raced at each other, connecting with a muted thud. Naruto pushed his sword against the metal handle of Hinata's scythe, trying to push her backwards. Hinata focused chakra to her feet and keep her feet firmly on the ground. Naruto jumped back from the deadlock and leveled his sword, rushing forward in a stabbing stance. Hinata leapt into the air to avoid the attack, using her built-up chakra to jump higher than normal. Naruto jumped after her and they clashed in midair. Naruto flipped over her to get behind her. As he was upside down, Hinata's scythe came at him and he blocked it with his sword. Naruto completed his flip and landed on the ground before rushing at Hinata again. Naruto swung his sword and Hinata brought the handle of her scythe up to block the blade. Naruto's blade slammed into the scythe before he flipped over his head. As he came down, he swung the blade at Hinata's head, but she ducked and swung the blade of the scythe low to catch him in the knees. Naruto stuck out at hand, balancing on the flat of the scythe in a handstand. With a push, he flipped himself of the blade and landed in front of Hinata. Naruto raised a hand to stop Hinata before she attacked again. He panted and rested his hands on his knees. He looked at her and shook his head in wonder. That was amazing. I haven't been this tired in a long time. You're amazing, Hinata, he said, still doubled over. Hinata blushed at his praise and sealed her scythe again. Naruto shaited his sword and sat down against the training stump behind him. Hinata came and sat next to him. He looked over and smiled at her. He pulled a scroll out of his back pocket and unsealed it to reveal 2 bento boxes. He handed one to Hinata and they started to eat lunch. There was mostly silence, but it was broken with occasional comments like, "Wow, this is really good." He leaned back against the stump and watched the clouds. Hinata leaned onto his shoulder and watched the clouds float by. After a while he got up, noticing that the sun was starting to drop. He took her hand and started to run towards the Hokage monument. Hinata managed to ask as they ran, "Where are we going?" Naruto's only reply was to look back and smile at her, saying only, "You'll see." They reached the top of the Hokage monument as the sun started to set. Hinata started to ask what they were here, but Naruto only pointed and said, "Look." Hinata turned to where his finger was pointing and gasped. The sun had started to go down, illuminating all of Konoha. The sky had turned pink but was a glowing red at the edges. The two sat and watched the sun go down. When it had completely disappeared, Naruto stood and offered his hand to Hinata, helping her up. "Hinata," he said softly, "you need to get home." Hinata's eyes saddened and she started to head towards the Hyuga compound. Naruto walked with her, matching her stride. As they walked, they talked about small, inconsequential things. As they neared the gate, Boruto stopped. "Goodbye, Hinata," he said. "Goodbye, Naruto-kun." The sadness was clear in her face as she turned and opened the gate. Naruto turned and walked back towards his apartment. The next morning at the bridge, 7:45. Naruto walked towards the bridge to see Hinata and Sasuke already there. He walked towards them and smiled. Ohio, Hinata, Sasuke.
Ohio, Naruto-kun.
Sasuke merely nodded. Kakashi appeared in a poof of smoke, with Tazuna close behind him. Giving an eye smile, he rubbed the back of his head and said, "Sorry I'm late, there was this fish that was drowning, but my mask was glued to my face, so I had to instruct Tazuna-san on how to do it." Everyone stared at him with blatant looks of disbelief. Tazuna shook his head. He'd heard some lame excuses, but that one was terrible. Finally, Naruto spoke up. "Kakashi-sensei, that one was just terrible. I mean, it's like you weren't even trying." Kakashi simply gave an eye smile and walked towards the village gates. A few hours towards Wave. Naruto and Hinata were walking together, talking about small things. Naruto looked to his right and saw a puddle. It hasn't rained in days, which means that's probably a genjutsu. No bandit could cast such a thing. There are enemy ninjas hiding from sight. Naruto's hand slipped to the sword he had moved to his hip but made no other moves. Kakashi saw that Naruto had noticed and allowed himself a small smile. As they stepped past the puddle, to ninja exploded out of the puddle out. They wore horned headbands with Kiri emblems on them and wore claw gauntlets that were connected to each other but a serrated chain. The two ninja wrapped the chain around Kakashi, and with a pull, tore him into pieces. Hinata screamed as the two came towards her with their claws raised. Naruto appeared in front of her and knocked the claws away with his sword. He jumped to the right, leading them away from Hinata. One of them shot the gauntlet forward in a punch. Naruto ducked the blow, while turning. As he finished his turn, he brought the blade of his sword across the stomach of the shinobi. As Naruto came back up, he switched to a reverse grip, cut the man completely in half. The other shinobi's eyes flashed with fear as he turned towards Tazuna instead. As he lunged at Tazuna, Naruto appeared next to him and slashed downwards, his sword flashing in the sun. The man screamed as his arm hit the ground with a wet thud. Naruto slashed once more and the man fell silent, never to speak again. Tazuna, Sasuke, and Hinata all puked at the carnage left before. Kakashi came strolling out of the woods, looking at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Naruto simply shrugged and wiped his blade on the grass. As Hinata regained control of herself, she raised her head to Kakashi. "Kakashi-sensei, how did you survive? We saw you get cut into pieces." Kakashi jerked his thumb over to where he had died. Sasuke and Hinata both looked only to see a cut-up log. Kakashi turned to Tazuna with a serious expression on his face. "Tazuna-san, you need to start explaining now." XXX. After Tazuna had finished with his guilt trip about the poor state of Wave, Kakashi turned to his team. "What do we do? This is clearly a higher-ranked mission than he paid for." Naruto shook his head. "We can't just abandon him, we have to complete the mission." Both Hinata and Sasuke nodded, and they continued toward Wave. After they had been walking for a while, Naruto heard a rustle in the bushes. Dropping down a kunai held in his sleeve, he threw it at the bush. As he parted the bush, he saw a bunny, the kunai embedded an inch above its head. Naruto turned to face everyone else. "This is a white bunny, which means it has been bred in captivity, which also means that it's probably a dash." Naruto's danger sense went off, and he and Kakashi threw themselves to the ground screaming, "Get down!" A giant Zanbato whirled over their heads and slammed into the tree in front of them. There was a swirl of leaves and a figure appeared on top of the blade. The figure wore arm warmers of the camouflage in Kumo. He wore normal shinobi sandals and regular ninja pants. He wore a leather strap across his back to hold his sword, and bandages coated the lower parts of his face. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized who this was, and he and Kakashi spoke at the same time. "Momochi Zabuza, A-rank Nuke Nin from the Kirigakure no Sato, wanted for the attempted assassination of the Mizukichi." Kakashi looked at Naruto, surprised that he knew so much. Zabuza chuckled darkly. "Then it seems my name precedes me." Kakashi glared at him and raised his hand to the forehead protector covering his right eye. "Then it seems that I'll have to go all out." He raised his forehead protector and Zabuza laughed. "Oh, I get to see it so soon." Copy Nin Kakashi, wielder of the Sharingan. Sasuke stiffened and thought to himself. The Sharingan? But that only belongs to Uchihas. Why does he have it? Zabuza backflipped towards the water, tearing his sword from the tree with a rip. He landed on the water and put both hands in the half-ram seal, one at body height and the other above his head. He called out his jutsu. Kirigakure no Jutsu. A heavy mist rolled in from under his feet, dropping visibility to absolute zero. A voice sounded from all around them, stating the 8 killing points. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Now then, let's see how many I can get in one go. Naruto heard the sword slicing through the mist behind him and spun, unsheathing his sword to block the massive blade. He focused chakra to his feet to help keep him on the ground, but the force of the strike was too powerful and it blew him backwards. Naruto was shocked by the power in the force of the swing. There's no way someone could be that strong, and he only used one arm. Naruto shakily stood, using his sword to help him stand. He heard Zabuza laughing in front of him and looked up. Zabuza stood laughing, his massive sword slung over his shoulder and Naruto's headband clutched in his hand. Zabuza stared coldly at the boy. "You don't deserve this headband, boy." He spat the last word as if it were something vile. Naruto's eyes narrowed and he formed a cross-shaped seal with his hands.
Kagebunsin no Jutsu.
6 Narutos appeared, swords held in varying stances. As he got ready to charge Zabuza, he saw Kakashi appear with a kunai to Zabuza's throat. "Your opponent is me," Kakashi said. Zabuza laughed and said quietly, "You fail, Kakashi." He splashed into water and Zabuza appeared behind him and slashed him in two with a sweep of his Kubikiri Hocho. Kakashi splashed into water and Zabuza's eyes widened in surprise that he'd been able to copy the jutsu in such a dense fog. Zabuza ducked Kakashi's slash and pivoted on the hilt of his sword. He smashed Kakashi in the chest with a vicious kick, sending him flying into the water. Zabuza appeared next to him and started making hand seals. When he stopped, he called out, "Suroi no Jutsu, water prison jutsu. I think that's how you spell?" The water around Kakashi formed a bubble, trapping him. Laughter sounded from above them and Zabuza jumped down out of the trees. He looked at Kakashi and said, "So the great Kakashi was trapped by a Mizu Bushin. To be honest, I expected a bit more." Everyone's eyes widened. It had been a Mizu Bunshin all along. Zabuza turned and stared at all the genin and Tazuna. With a small chuckle he said, "And now it's time for you to die." Naruto walked over to where the Mizu Bunshin had been dispelled and picked up his headband, tying it around his neck. His metal back gloves scraped against the protector, scratching it. But he shakily stood, swaying on his feet. He held his katana in a reverse grip, the blade pointing towards the ground. Naruto moved at Zabuza, moving from side to side. As he reached Zabuza, he swung his katana, but Zabuza swung his zanbato and cracked him in the head with the hilt, sending him flying backwards. He rolled before coming to a stop against a tree. Naruto propped himself up on his sword and stood again. Hinata screamed for him to stop, but he paid no attention. His hand clutched his sword hilt so tightly that blood started to run down the blade. He moved again at Zabuza, moving much faster despite his injuries. He weaved back and forth, dodging Zabuza's sword blows. Zabuza threw a kick as the boy ducked, catching him in the face and sending him rolling into the tree once more. Naruto struggled to stand but was only able to kneel. Zabuza laughed and said, "I like you, boy, you'll be fun to kill. And who knows, after I kill you and that boy, I might have some fun with that girl over there." Naruto's hand gripped tighter around the hilt of his sword, his blood now running onto the ground. Naruto's head was bowed and his hair shadowed his eyes. But when he looked up, Zabuza froze. Naruto's blue eyes had become a brilliant white. The pupil was black and slitted. When he spoke with a voice different from his own. The voice of one who had seen many battles and killed many men. Naruto rushed at Zabuza with a speed he shouldn't have been able to move at, carrying that huge sword. Naruto smashed down in a vicious two-handed blow on Zabuza's sword. He jumped back and leveled his sword at Zabuza. Zabuza's eyes grew wide as flames flickered over the length of the blade. Naruto held the sword in a reverse grip, the edge of the sword touching the ground. Naruto raced towards Zabuza, the sword leaving a trail of fire as it scraped along the ground. Zabuza brought his sword up in a horizontal block to block the diagonal slash that was coming. Naruto saw this and instead swung his sword low over the ground, aiming for Zabuza's knees. Zabuza jumped over the slash, barely dodging the fire that emanated from the sword. Naruto completed his spin, using the momentum from the attack to come down in a crushing vertical slash. Zabuza managed to bring his sword up to block the blow, but the sheer force of the blow depressed the ground into a crater about a foot deep. Kakashi watched in amazement as Naruto fought on par with and a class nuke Nin. Zabuza pushed the sword back and used the break in Naruto's guard to aim a horizontal slash at his stomach. Naruto knocked the blade down with a slash from his sword and pinned it under his foot. Zabuza gave a jerk that flung Naruto off the blade and up into the air. Naruto flipped in midair and rightened himself, coming down with his sword over his head. Zabuza sidestepped and Naruto's sword slammed into the spot where he had been standing. Naruto swung his sword sideways and almost got Zabuza in the side. What Zabuza forgot was the trail of flames emanating from the sword. The flames seared past him, singing his skin. Zabuza stopped any possible burn with a quick water jutsu. Naruto flipped over him and aimed a slash at the back of Zabuza's head. Zabuza lashed out with a kick and caught Naruto in the stomach. Naruto flew towards a tree, but he flipped and pushed his legs against the tree, using it as a springboard to come back with an even faster attack. As Naruto flew towards Zabuza, he saw Zabuza bring up his sword in a wide block, using the full width of the sword to his advantage. Naruto frowned as he saw that he wouldn't be able to break through that guard. But perhaps he didn't have to. Naruto did a front flip so that he was coming at Zabuza's feet first. As soon as he felt his feet connect with Zabuza's sword, he flexed his knees, absorbing most of the momentum. He pushed off the sword and landed a backflip. Unfortunately for Zabuza was that all that momentum went to him, which was exactly what Naruto was hoping for. The force of Naruto connecting with his sword knocked Zabuza off balance, breaking his guard for an instant. Naruto knew that he wouldn't be able to attack with a sword swing that fast, so he dashed forward and punched Zabuza in the stomach, winding him. Naruto followed up with a roundhouse kick to Zabuza's face, sending Zabuza bouncing across the water like a skipping stone. Zabuza forced chakra out of his body and rightened himself, standing on the water. He flashed through a lot of hand seals, and on the 44th he jumped into the air and called out the name of his jutsu.
Suiryuda no Jutsu.
A large dragon made of water rose from the lake under Zabuza and rushed towards Naruto. Naruto focused Ryatsu into his hand and ran his hand over the blade, forcing it into the runes, making them glow blood red. He swung his sword and called out, Jigaku Okibi Ken, Furia, Hellfire Sword, Flare. A large blade of fire burst from his sword. Steam erupted as fire and water fought each other. Naruto swung his sword, the pull of the wind blowing away the fog. Zabuza jumped onto the lake and made multi-hand signs. As he stopped, he called out,
Daibakufu no Jutsu.
The water around Zabuza swirled and shot forward at an impossible speed. Everyone who was watched opened their eyes wide. There was no way that Naruto could dodge this. Naruto closed his eyes and after a moment snapped them back open. He channeled more Ryatsu into his sword and held it high over his head in a plunging position as the water flew towards him. As the water came upon him, he plunged his sword into the ground yelling, Jigaku Okibi Ken, Katsu, Hellfire Sword, explode. There was a giant explosion of flame. The water that had been coming at him hissed and turned into steam. Zabuza appeared behind Naruto and swung his sword, aiming to cut him in half. Naruto spun and smashed into Zabuza's blade with the hilt of his sword, knocking the blow off course. Zabuza used the momentum and twisted his sword, bring it down towards Naruto's head. Naruto brought up his sword and blocked the blow, the two massive blades fighting with each other for dominance. Naruto ran his sword down the length of Zabuza's blade. Zabuza's eyes watched the progress of the blade, because once it got far enough down he would be able to strike. As Naruto neared the end of the blade, he spun to the right, his blade leaving Zabuza's. Zabuza was still putting pressure on his blade and it slammed into the ground. Naruto lashed out with the flat of his blade, smashing Zabuza in the ribs and sending him skidding across the ground. As Zabuza tried to stand, he groaned as he collapsed to the ground. Naruto had broken 5 of his ribs with that blow. He was finished. Naruto walked slowly towards Zabuza, his blade consuming more and more of his Ryatsu until the blade was covered in flames. Naruto slowly raised his sword. The flames on his sword leapt hungrily into the air, becoming larger with each second. As Naruto was about to strike the final blow, two Sunban needle impaled Zabuza in the throat, and he fell to the ground, lifeless. There was a swirl of leaves, and a boy of about 13 appeared over Zabuza's corpse. The boy had on a Hunter Nin mask that completely obscured his face. The boy threw a Sanban, and the clone holding Kakashi dispersed. "Thank you for fighting him. I have been tailing his for quite some time." The boy hoisted Zabuza over his shoulder and made to disappear when Naruto looked straight at him. "Aren't Hunter Nins supposed to destroy the body on the spot and bring back something as proof that they killed their target?" The boy shrugged and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. "Damn it! He got away," cursed Naruto, slamming his sword into the ground. The Ryatsu faded from his system and his clothes returned to normal. Kakashi stood, swaying slowly. Naruto took a step forward and suddenly felt pain pulse through his body. He fell slowly towards the ground thinking, "Kyuso, I must have overdone it." He hit the ground with a thud and Hinata rushed forward to check on him. Thankfully, he was just exhausted from his fight with Zabuza. His heart and pulse rates were normal. Kakashi took a step forward and he too fell to the ground. "I must have been without oxygen for too long." Hinata checked on Kakashi as well and found that he would be fine in a couple of days. Sasuke couldn't move. How could Naruto have gotten so much power to be able to take on an A-rank Nuke Nin and win? Just who is he? At Tezuna's house, Naruto awoke slowly, squinting his eyes against the bright sunlight. He slowly lifted himself out of the bed, not knowing where he was. He saw his saw leaning against the wall, a katana once more. He belted it on and walked out to the kitchen. He saw many people seated at a table. Kakashi, Hinata, Sasuke, Tezuna, and two other people he didn't know. A child and a woman with long black hair. Kakashi waved at him and Hinata gave him a good morning. His throat felt as dry as sandpaper. He managed to ask, "Doublech, where are we?" Tezuna smiled and pointed to himself. "Why, you're at my house, boy." Kakashi stood up and Naruto noticed that he was on crutches. "Kakashi-sensei, what happened to you?" Kakashi just rubbed the back and smiled. "It seems that my body was deprived of oxygen for too long." Naruto nodded. Kakashi turned and faced everyone. "All right, first we'll eat breakfast and then we'll train." The attack that Hunter Nin did on Zabuza more than likely simply put him in a near-death state instead of killing him. Naruto turned before anyone could ask questions. Senbon, being primarily used in acupuncture, have a very low kill rate. Only a direct hit to a vital organ would have any hope of killing someone. Everyone nodded and sat down to eat. The boy sitting at the other end of the table glared at Naruto. Naruto ignored him and kept eating. Finally, the boy stood from the table and stomped up the stairs. Naruto raised an eyebrow but did nothing. A clearing in the forest. Kakashi stood in front of the three of them. Finally, he spoke. "Today you will be learning to climb trees." Everyone nodded, waiting for the other part of the instructions. "You will need to focus chakra to the soles of your feet to keep from falling off the trees. Too much and the tree will repel you, too little and you won't stick to the tree at all. Do it like this." He turned and focused chakra to the soles of his feet, walking up the tree, crutches and all. Naruto looked at Kakashi as he hung upside down from a tree branch. Kakashi pulled 3 kunai from the pocket of his pants and threw them to the 3 on the ground. Naruto caught his, spinning it by the loop on the handle. Hinata and Sasuke simply leaned down and pulled their kunai out of the ground. Team 7 focused chakra to the soles of their feet and dashed towards the tree. Naruto made it about 10 steps up the tree before he slipped and fell towards the ground. He hit the ground with his hands and pushed off, doing a kip up and landing on his feet. Sasuke only made it around 5 steps before the tree cracked and he was propelled backwards. They sat on the ground until they heard a giggle from above them. They looked up to see Hinata sitting on a tree branch about 30 feet up. The kunai stabbed into the trunk of the tree. It makes sense, with the Jukin she would have to have perfect chakra control. Kakashi chuckled to himself. Naruto looked up at Hinata, not with jealousy but with pure admiration. Hinata blushed under his stare and jumped down to the ground. Naruto smiled at her. "Good job, Hinata. Do you think you could help me out a bit?" Hinata nodded. With his massive chakra stores, of course, it would be difficult for him. As she helped him, she asked him a question that made him stiffen. "Naruto-kun, what happened back there, with Zabuza, I mean?" Naruto turned to her and shook his head. I can't tell you right now, but I will. Hinata knew that answer was going to be the best she would get and continued teaching him. He didn't seem to understand that the Byakugan could see through everything, including his henge. But she'd tell him that later. After a few pointers, Naruto tried tree walking again, this time making it more than twice the amount he had last time. He marked the spot where he slipped, already high above Sasuke. Sasuke knew he needed help but was far too proud to ask for it. After many hours of training, they trudged back towards the house. Naruto especially tired since he had used 1000 Kage Bunshin to help him in his training. As they sat down at the table, Naruto noticed the boy glaring at him again. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. You got a problem with me or something, kid? The kid slammed back his chair. Standing up, he shouted, Why do you try so hard? There's no possible way you can beat Gato. He'll just kill you all. You come to this town. You don't know anything about what's going on here. You always act so carefree and happy. You have no idea what suffering is, what my life has been like. The last sentence struck a nerve. He jumped up quickly, shoving his chair back so violently that it cracked against the wall. He laughed without mirth, a cold, dark laugh that seemed to echo throughout the house. His eyes slitted. I don't know what suffering is. My entire life I've been beaten on my birthday, had my apartment burned down at least 6 times now. Every day until I was 6 I was beaten within an inch of my life. I never had any parents. I've lived alone my entire life. And up until we became Team 7, I'd never had a single friend. Don whined to me about how unfair your life is. You don't understand how good you've got it. He shouted at the boy. Inari shouted back. Yeah, right. You're probably just lying so everyone will feel sorry for you. Naruto's eyes flashed and he tore off his shirt, revealing hundreds of crisscrossing scars. One particularly large scar ran from his left shoulder blade all the way down to his right hip. Do you think I'm lying now? I have scars all over the rest of my body as well. He pointed to the scar on his back. This scar was given to me by an shinobi wielding a katana, one of my own villagers. He pulled his shirt back on and stormed out of the house, sitting on the pier. Everyone stared in shock, still able to picture Naruto standing there, with the scars all over his body. Naruto-kun, all those scars. Hinata left the house and sat on the pier with Naruto.
Naruto-kun.
She wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug, intent on never letting him go. She cried on his shoulder, so sorry for all the things that had happened to him. He stiffened at her hug until he heard he crying. She crying? For me. He wrapped his arms around her in a hug, and for the first time in 8 years, cried. Ta-da! Chapter 7. Naruto's Mindscape. Naruto stood in front of the Kyuubi's cage, water lapping at his ankles. Kyuubi stood in front of him in his human form. He looked at Naruto and smirked. Well, kid, you're very good with swordplay, but the fact remains that you know almost no ninjutsu. Naruto hung his head and Kyuubi continued. That's not to say that I couldn't teach you some. Naruto's head shot up and his eyes widened. How will you do that? I mean, you don't even have hands half the time. Kyuubi growled and an explosion of red chakra blew Naruto backwards. Do you forget who you're talking to? I'm the one that created the Sharingan, aren't I? What do you think I do in here all day? This place is boring as shit. Kyuubi looked up and a gleam appeared in his eyes. He flashed through multiple seals and landed on his final one. Naruto screamed in pain as seals appeared across his body. He rolled on the ground, slamming his head into the ground. Naruto finally stopped screaming and stood again. What the hell did you do to me? He shouted. Kyuubi smirked and snapped his fingers. Naruto's seals glowed red and he slammed into the ground. Naruto stood, finding it much harder. Naruto took a deep breath and said, Let's try this again. What the hell did you do to me? Kyuubi answered him this time. I covered your body in gravity seals. They'll only show here though, so your friends won't see anything strange. The increased gravity's pull on your body, making your body weight twice as much as it normally does. I can increase gravity's pull with these seals, making them an excellent way to train because they train all of your body at once. Kyuubi waved a hand vaguely towards all the water around them. But first you've got to do something about this. You mean change it, how? First, clear your mind. Let it become a blank slate. Naruto did as he was told and the walls and floor became pure white, completely blank. Next, think of what you want this room to look like. Naruto focused his thoughts and a landscape slowly changed, becoming far larger than the room should contain. When Naruto opened his eyes, he gasped at what he had created. In front of him was a huge, behind him was a large plain, and to the left of him was a mountain range dotted with trees and even a waterfall. But to the right of him was Kyuubi. Kyuubi stared at his hands and walked around laughing. The cage had disappeared. Kyuubi turned to Naruto, a smile clear on his face. "Thank you," he whispered, just loud enough for Naruto to hear. "Naruto, I'm going to teach you chakra control, jutsu, kenjutsu, the works. The only problem is that this is only for mental training. It gives you the experience of training, but with no actual muscle build-up, meaning you'll only be able to train and practice here. It's a lot like your Kagebunshin. However, even though we won't be able to build muscle here, we can build muscle memory, making it so that you do things almost automatically." Naruto nodded, his eyes shining at the possibilities of training in a place like this. "Naruto, I want you to create 100 Kagebunshins and have them start to tree walk before we move on to everything else. That way you'll be training in one thing even as we train in another." Naruto put his hands in a ram seal and shouted, "Kagebunshin no Jutsu." 100 clones flickered into existence in front of Naruto. With a wave of his hand, Naruto sent them to practice tree walking. Kyuubi nodded and started talking again. "First, we'll work on taijutsu. Keep in mind that you will be much slower with those gravity seals, this only to get you accustomed to the weight. This will only be light sparring. You can't die here, but any injuries you receive here will still hurt, even if they don't affect your body on the outside." Both Naruto and Kyuubi slipped into fighting stances, Naruto slightly off balance from the added weight. Naruto dashed forward much slower than before. He threw a punch at Kyuubi, but it was sluggish and Kyuubi easily dodged it, slamming Naruto in the chest with an uppercut. Naruto forced himself to stand, struggling against the added weight of the gravity seals. He threw a flurry of punches at Kyuubi, all his punches either being blocked or dodged. Naruto didn't notice, but his body was slowly becoming accustomed to the weight of the gravity seals, his punches becoming slowly faster. Kyuubi caught both of Naruto's fists and smirked. His knee flew upwards and caught the boy in the stomach. Kyuubi let go of Naruto's hands and he doubled over, coughing. When he had regained his breath, he stood upright, slipping into a fighting position once again. Naruto charged Kyuubi and threw a punch. Seeing that Kyuubi would easily block the punch, he dropped low and tried to cut Kyuubi's legs out from under him. Kyuubi simply raised the leg Naruto was aiming at and stomped down on the side of the boy's knee. Naruto rolled backwards, holding his knee and screaming in pain. When the pain had subsided, he stood again. Kyuubi rushed at him, throwing his leg out in a snap kick that Naruto barely dodged. Kyuubi swung his other leg, catching Naruto in the stomach. As his foot landed back on the ground, he launched a vicious knee rise that caught Naruto in the chin and sent him flying backwards through the air. Kyuubi slowly lowered his leg and stood easily. Naruto was on his hands and knees, coughing up blood from where he had bitten his tongue. He slowly stood, swaying slightly. Kyuubi ran towards Naruto and slammed his knee into the side of Naruto's face, knocking him back onto the ground. Naruto shakily stood, coughing up blood. He dashed towards Kyuubi, throwing a flurry of punches, these much faster than the last. He threw a roundhouse kick at Kyuubi's head, but Kyuubi ducked and smashed him in the chin with a palm strike, sending him flying backwards. Naruto rolled and came to a stop about 4 feet away. Naruto stood up and faced Kyuubi, blood dripping from his face and body, but he still wasn't ready to give up. He raced towards Kyuubi, far faster than before, almost his normal speed. He slammed blow after blow of palms and punches, hitting Kyuubi with everything he had. He finished with a sweeping kick, knocking Kyuubi off the ground. He smashed a punch into Kyuubi's gut, making him cough blood. He threw another punch and caught Kyuubi in the face, sending him spiraling into the air. He jumped into the air above Kyuubi and hit him in the chest with a barrage of stomping kicks. He finished with an axe kick to Kyuubi's head, sending him flying towards the ground. He appeared below Kyuubi, smashing him in his spine with a fist. There was a crack and Kyuubi slumped off his fist. Suddenly red chakra enveloped him and he stood again, looking as if he had never taken any damage. Kyuubi smirked. "Well, it seems like you've gotten used to the extra weight. When you wake up, you will still be affected by the weight, but you'll know how much extra output you need to move normally. Naruto nodded, amazed at how strong Kyuubi had been. Kyuubi snapped and a chalkboard appeared behind him, with a diagram of the human body, complete with chakra pathways, even some that Naruto had never seen before. Now, you know of the nature of chakra, right? Yeah, it's the manipulation of physical and mental energies. Right, most jutsu require a mixture of the two, plus hand seals to channel the chakra, and a name to unleash the chakra. But if you become good enough at a particular jutsu, all you will need chakra and hand seals to focus it. It presents a massive advantage in battle because unless your opponent recognizes the hand seals you're using, they'll be caught off guard once you use the jutsu, thinking that you would have to say the name, giving them time to prepare. Naruto frowned. But if the jutsu needs a voice to unleash, how does practicing help you not have to say the name of the jutsu? Look at it this way, what is noise? Vibrations in the air that are translated when they reach your ears. He answered, I don't know if that's right. Tell me and I'll correct it if you assent. And if voice is just a vibration, then if you match that vibration, what would happen? Naruto frowned, thinking. Watch. Kyuubi made a few hand seals and snapped with 2 fingers. Suddenly the field around him burst into flames. The flames quickly died down, leaving Naruto staring in awe as he figured it out. The vibration activate the jutsu, he whispered. Kyuubi smiled. I knew you'd figure it out. He pointed to the chakra network of the person on the board and traced a path through the chakra coils. When a person channels chakra, it travels through these coils to get to the point in the body that the person is focusing it to. Depending on the jutsu, this could be the hands, chest, throat, or feet. Some jutsu affect the environment around the person and the chakra is expelled out of the body. Here he paused for a moment, then continued. However, humans' chakra systems are flawed. There are holes in the chakra coils, which causes much of the chakra to be lost as it travels to the point where it's needed. With the Mriatsu, chakra, and demonic chakra that runs through your chakra coils, you have larger tiers in your chakra coils than most people. With your amount of chakra, however, it doesn't really bother you. But if someone else had the amount of tiers in their coils that you do and tried to use a jutsu, they would immediately suffer from chakra exhaustion. Kyuubi frowned. When you channel chakra for a jutsu, it tears your inner coils, making you lose a lot of chakra. You end up rupturing most of your chakra coils. If I wasn't healing them as soon as you used your jutsus, you'd probably be dead from the amount of damage to them. However, even with me healing them, most of the chakra you channel escapes through the holes, making it appear as a helix around your body. It won't happen here because this is your mind, but out there. He trailed off, thinking. I could send a pulse of demonic chakra through your system. What that would do is it would basically rebuild your chakra systems. It would tear your chakra coils, destroying, but with my healing, when they reformed, they would be intertwined with demonic chakra, strengthening them. The thing is that it would cause you incredible pain. You wouldn't die, but you'll wish you would just to stop the pain. I'll do it now so you won't be awake for it. I can make sure you stay asleep, but you'll be feeling really bad when you wake up in the morning. On top of the pain, think a hangover times 20. Naruto nodded. Do it. Red chakra pulsed around Kyuubi and then disappeared. He nodded. It's done. Tazuna's house. Everyone woke up to a loud yell of pain. They all rushed to Naruto's room and burst open the door. They gasped as they saw what was going on. Naruto was covered in red chakra. The chakra pulsed and enveloped Naruto completely. Naruto opened his mouth to show rapidly growing canines. H. He screamed again as the chakra pulsed. The bed caught fire and he fell to the floor. The flames licked hungrily at him but couldn't get through the barrier of red chakra. There was movement along Naruto's muscles as the chakra built up his muscles. Then a sickening crunch as they broke, which were immediately healed. The red chakra thinned and appeared as a transparent red barrier between Naruto and the world. Everyone looked on in horror as his body rebuilt itself from the inside out. The mindscape. Naruto grimaced as he felt a twinge of pain but shook it off. Kyuubi noticed this and his eyes narrowed. War Ridley. The chakras affecting him even in his mind. This might not turn out as well as I had hoped. Kyuubi shook his head to get rid of the thoughts and turned to Naruto. All right, I'm going to teach you a jutsu that will help you greatly. It's one I created a long time ago. It's called Eren Hada 1. Iron Skin. It's a defensive jutsu that blocks most attacks but consumes a massive amount of chakra, so use it carefully. Here are the seals. He flashed through a few seals, making Naruto copy them until he was sure that they were the right speed to actually be used in combat. As Naruto finished a set of hand seals, Kyuubi slipped into a fighting stance. I'm going to attack you until you do the jutsu in combat. You can't block any of my attacks unless you use that jutsu. I'll give you a hint. Remember what I said about focusing chakra to different body parts. Naruto tilted his head, trying to think. He suddenly felt himself flying backwards from a fist planted in his gut. Kyuso. Guess I took too long thinking. Naruto fell to the ground, skidding to a stop in front of the mountain that he stood, brushing stone fragments only to duck quickly to dodge Kyuubi's incoming kick. Shit. He's much faster than before. Just how much was he holding back? He was suddenly interrupted as a knee smashed into his solar plexus, sending him flying into the mountainside behind him. He's not giving me time to think, but then again that's the point, isn't it, to be able to use it in a battle situation. He quickly jumped up, dodging a flurry of Kyuubi punches. He ducked Kyuubi's next kick and slipped behind him before jumping up into a tree. I've got to think. Channeling chakra to the body, expelling chakra. That's it. He channeled chakra all throughout his body and flashed through the hand seals and dropped down in front of Kyuubi. As Kyuubi's fist flew towards him, he finished the jutsu, calling out, Eren Hata. There was a snap and then a yell of pain. Kyuubi cursed, grabbing his hand in pain. Damn it. He figured it out. Red chakra enveloped his wrist and then it was fine. The bone receding back into the flesh. Kyuubi stood and smiled. Well done, Kit. You figured it out. Naruto smiled and suddenly Kyuubi stood straight. It's done, you're waking up. Naruto nodded and quickly dispelled his clones as he felt himself slipping away from his subconscious into the world of the waking. Tezuna's house. The first thing Naruto felt when he woke up was pain. Lots of pain. He groaned and tried to sit up, only to be pushed back down. He struggled to open his eyes, but when he did, blinding sunlight filtering through and he closed them quickly. He laid his head on the pillow that had been placed under his head and managed to croak out. Close the blinds, please. The person obliged and he opened his eyes again. Hinata. Hinata looked down at him, concern evident in her eyes. Naruto-kun, you have to rest, you went through a lot last night, she said. He nodded, remembering what had happened the night before. After a bit, he pushed himself upright, pushing away Hinata's hand when she tried to help him. He shakily stood, his whole body racked with pain. He walked to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes widened as he examined the second set of changes. Your chakra did this? He felt Kyuubi nod and looked closely. His silver-streaked blonde hair was now almost completely silver. His fangs had grown much longer and he noticed that he was far more muscular than he had been. His red shirt had torn and again he repeated the seals Kyuubi had used. There was a cloud of smoke in front of him and a black shirt appeared in front of him that he slipped it on and walked out of the bathroom. He was startled by the loud hello of everyone at the table but quickly shook it off. He took a seat at the table and began to eat breakfast. After a few minutes, Kakashi leaned forward. Naruto, what happened last night? Naruto raised an eyebrow, asking the man to explain. Last night, red chakra covered your body. It increased your muscles, body mass. We heard your bones strengthen after they broke multiple times last night. When Hinata looked at your chakra with Byakugan, she saw that it was emanating from your stomach. What was going on? Naruto pretended to act stupid. I don't know, Kakashi-sensei. All I know is that I went to bed last night, and then woke up this morning and my hair and body were like this. Kakashi knew that he was lying and pulled Naruto off to the side. Naruto, if something has happened, I'm ordering to tell me. Naruto scowled and stared Kakashi in the eye. You have no right to tell me what to do. Not after that Raikiri of yours. Kakashi's eye widened and he walked away. Naruto opened the door to the house and walked outside to train. Alright, I'm done with chapter 7 now. I usually update on the weekends because that's when I have more time. If I update during the weekdays, you can probably expect another update from me over the weekend. Naruto's mysterious past. 5 years after the Kyuubi attack. And 5 years of planning revenge. Hey Naruto, Kakashi yelled out to our favorite blonde. Oh hey Kakashi, what's up? The blonde boy yelled, seeing his favorite. person in the world other than the old Hokage, but then again, he was like Naruto's grandfather, so that was a completely different story. "Hey Naruto," Kakashi began to ask but stopped when he saw that the boy's attention was focused on a fly buzzing in front of his face. Kakashi's eyebrow twitched and he tried again. "Hey Naruto, can I ask you a question?" "Sure Kakashi, because you know how much I love to hear about your troubles." Here the young demon container laughed. "I'm just kidding Kakashi," Naruto said, punching him in the arm. "Well, I was wondering if you can come with me to visit some relatives of mine. And well, it's a long walk and I don't like to be alone and all." "Sure, that'd be great Kakashi," Naruto said, excitedly jumping up and down, simply happy that he would get to spend so much time with his idol. "Ilgo Askoldman Hokajifikin," he blurted out, saying his words so fast that Kakashi had to think for at least 2 minutes before he deciphered it. There was a long moment of silence and Naruto said it against, this time much more slowly under Kakshi's wilting glare. "I'll go ask old man Hokage if I can," said Naruto, running off in the direction of the Hokage tower. Right after he said that, Kakashi snapped back in reality. "Now I'll get my revenge on that brat for killing Sensei," he said in his mind, and started to chuckle darkly. "You know the wahahahaha thing, evil scientist laugh. Naruto busted in the Hokage's office without even knocking. There are quite a few things that can go wrong when you burst into the Hokage's office unannounced, but let's just say when you do, and there's at least one squad of Umbu guards posted inside while you are in a bit of surprise. Well, needless to say, Naruto left the Hokage's office a happy boy with a busted lip. As he walked back to where he had seen Kakashi, Naruto began to think. "Alright Naruto, if you screw this up, Kakashi won't hang out with you anymore, but if I do it right, maybe he'll teach me a jutsu. That would be amazing." He grinned happily as he thought of the great Kakashi teaching him a jutsu. Naruto winced openly at the thought, losing one of the very few people who didn't hate him. "You know, come to think of it, I can only name a few people who like me. Old man, Kakashi. There's the chef to the ramen stand, even though I never did remember to ask him his name. He's always really nice to me though. Never runs me out of the shop or charges me extra, and a lot of the time he gives me free ramen." Naruto went to the front gate where he figured Kakashi would meet him. He waited, and waited, and waited. Naruto got really tired and began to lie down to take a nap in the bushes, knowing full well if a villager found him laying on the ground they would definitely do some form of injury on him. Kakashi showed up at the gate about 2 hours after Naruto had fallen asleep. As he looked at the hidden boy, a horrible smirk crossed his face as he contemplated how to wake Naruto up. Kakashi pulled out an explosive tag and set it about 20 feet from Naruto's head, just outside the blast radius, before setting it ablaze. "Haha little brat," Kakashi sneered. Naruto woke up hearing a laugh and a small annoying hiss. He rubbed his eyes and glanced down to where the hissing was coming from, his eyes growing to size of dinner plates as they landed on what was making the noise. Boom! Naruto screamed in terror and jumped up, but the blast didn't even singe his clothing. Kakashi sat there for a second before he burst out laughing. "Oh man Naruto, that has to be one of the funniest things I have seen in years." Naruto glared at the older boy. "Kakashi, are you going to take me now or what?" Naruto screamed at the top of his lungs. Needless to say, that resulted in quite a few angry villagers. "Oh crap," Kakashi and Naruto said at the same time. Kakashi quickly picked Naruto up, slinging him over his shoulder and taking off out the gates of Konoha. 2 hours later and 40 miles from Konoha. Naruto, here we can set up camp from here, Kakashi said, beginning to prepare himself for what he was going to. Naruto. Here, Naruto, said Kakashi, throwing the small boy a sleeping bag. You can use this. Thanks, Kakashi, Naruto said right before he fell asleep. Happy birthday, Naruto, the entire village screamed simultaneously. Wow, Naruto screamed excitedly. This is all for me? Yes, it is, Naruto, said the old Hokage. So Naruto, how's it feel to be 8 years old? Asked Kakashi. Yeah, Naruto, yelled the whole town. Do you feel excited? Little did the young boy know that this was all a genjutsu that Kakashi placed over him just in case he woke up before he had a chance to kill Naruto. What seemed like hours to Naruto was in reality only minutes. Okay, it's midnight, said Kakashi, before making seals around Naruto. Ha, I'm glad Sensei taught me this seal. He said to only use it in dire need, and this would be a time to use it. Damn brat, you had to kill my Sensei, Kakashi screamed, kicking Naruto's face. But in Naruto's fantasy, all he felt was a tiny prickle that didn't even affect him in any way while he was blowing out his candles. Kakashi knew what it was like to grow up with no parents. He knew it was hard. The closest thing he had to a dad was his sensei the fourth, and Naruto took that all away. Flashback in a flashback. Kakashi's father was a missing nin, or at least that's what most people thought. He knew that the mission was going to be a disaster in some cases. In others, it would help hundreds of lives. So the villagers treated me like I was him. I was out walking one day saying a poem I had just thought of. /n, I didn't make this, I got it from a story poem I found, so no, I don't take credit. How much you hate me. How you treat me. I fear of death from your hands. How you brought so much pain in my life. How I was forced not to be a normal child. Threatened every second. Of every minuet. Of every day. You laugh as you watch the crimson flow out of me. You laugh as I cry out asking you to stop. You laugh. End of flashback. That was the day the fourth put a stop to the beatings. By the time Kakashi pondered over all this, the attack was ready. Naruto, I'm sorry, but I can't let you to destroy what I have worked so hard for. Even if it means I sacrifice my life for what I believe in, I will do it. Kakashi screamed as he charged the Raikiri. He continuously pumped chakra in the attack until he was left dry and barely able to stand. 2 hours before, the Hokage was feeling weird. He had a feeling in his gut that told him to send a few shinobi after Kakashi. Umbu, he said sharply. 2 figures detached themselves from the shadows of the room and stood before the tired leader. They wore the masks of a boar and of a rabbit. Yes, Lord Hokage, what is it? Track down Kakashi and Naruto. Bring them back here. I have a bad feeling about this. The 2 Umbu nodded and disappeared in a blur of motion. I'm getting too old for this, he stated to no one in particular. X. Okay, the jutsu is ready, Kakashi said with a devious little smile behind his mask. He started to charge the Raikern in the palm of his hand. This was a very dangerous jutsu that he had created alone after learning to use his sensei's Rasengan. It was qualified as an assassination jutsu, despite its loudness. Involved a quick thrust, impaling the target and killing them in a single stroke. A loud chirp filled the woods, signaling the boy's imminent demise. Boar and rabbit quickly made their way through the woods. They traveled quickly towards the large chirping they heard, a blue glow coming from up ahead. As they broke through the trees, Kakashi saw them and raced forwards, intent on impaling the helpless boy before anyone could stop him. Just before the attack hit its mark, something jumped in front of the helpless boy. "Kakashi, what are you doing?" Rabbit asked, his grip on Kakashi's wrist tight, preventing the jutsu from progressing any further. With all the chakra he used creating the Raikiri, he no longer had enough to keep up the Genjutsu. Naruto was under. The boy slowly awoke, his eyes going wide as he saw Kakashi being restrained by an umbu in a rabbit mask. The Raikiri still glowed in his hand. "Kakashi?" he asked fearfully. The man was silent. "What do you expect to accomplish doing this?" Rabbit questioned, looking at the small boy to his right. I'm sorry," he croaked out to the boy before falling to the ground, the jutsu in his hand deactivating. Rabbit's grip on Kakashi's hand did not weaken.
I'm sorry, Naruto.
The man said again, being dragged away by Rabbit. Boar picked up the boy, who had slipped into unconsciousness from the shock. He wouldn't remember this day when he awoke, the Hokage's memory sealing. Jutsu would make sure of that. "But maybe," Boar said quietly to himself, "maybe it's better that way. Haku's a girl in this, okay? I take criticism good, tell me how to make this even better. Peace. Shika lazy." Author's note 2. Hey guys. Maelstrom Offire here, helping my friend Shika with this chapter. He's had a bit of trouble with his internet, so I'm going to finish up writing this chapter for him. It's pretty much all him. I'm just putting in some extra stuff, elaborating grammar, For the last couple paragraphs you will see my writing style shine through, but other than that it's his. Kakashi. After Naruto's little outburst at the house, everyone was shook up. No one was as bad as Kakashi-sensei. All of those memories came flooding back in his head like the water through a crumbled dam. He had spent year after year pushing them so far back that they were no longer memories but only a hint of the past. One that Kakashi would like to keep to himself. Truth be told, he really didn't feel like sharing those memories with anyone else. There were only a select few people that knew the truth about the incident, and the one that mattered was nowhere to be found. Naruto. Damn him! Naruto screamed as he threw his fist into a tree trunk for some therapy. To Naruto, therapy was throwing your fist into a tree until it cracked the tree. Or B. Broke your fist. S. He repeatedly smacked his fist against the tree. Somehow he blocked out the pain, but that was only in his hand, and not in his heart. "How could I be so foolish?" asked Naruto to no one in particular. Perhaps he was asking Kami herself, but even he didn't know who he spoke to. How could I even think for an instant I would have someone to... I don't even know anymore. He slammed his fist into the bark one more time before turning his back on the shattered wood and sliding down the tree. He stared at his cut and bleeding hand, absent-mindedly pulling the splinters from his fingers as he sat slumped at the base of the tree. "Sometimes," he began quietly, as if to voice his own concerns. His voice was quiet, because maybe he himself didn't want to hear what he was saying. "Sometimes all I want is to leave this place, just up and leave the hidden leaf." He watched the blood begin to well up from where he had removed the long shards of wood that embedded themselves in his hand. Is my life really all that different now that it was in my childhood? Has anything really changed? When I was a kid, I was hated. I'm stronger now, but still I'm hated. He slowly wiped the blood from his hands onto his pants. Is there really any point in staying in a place where you are so hated and despised? He sighed, closing his eyes and resting his head against the tree with an audible thud. I could always ask Hinata to come with me so I wouldn't be lonely. No, I could never ask her to do that for me. After all, she has a wonderful life back in the village. Why would she give it up for me? Would she ever give it up for me even if I asked? No, I don't think she would. I'm just some dead last loser freak. If she came with me, would she be despised as I am? Naruto still hadn't opened his eyes. If he had, he might have seen Hinata staring at him open-mouthed from the bushes nearby. But if I'm gone, he said to himself, not aware that he had an audience. If I'm gone, the villagers won't have anything to attack her with. They won't be able to hurt her just for being around me. Whatever it takes, I suppose, I will become hated, I will become feared, and I will be the village's exiled pariah. Anything for her, anything if it meant protecting her. And it was true, he would do anything for her. She had shown him kindness and compassion, the only one in his age group to do so. The others had become his friends, but she had become more in such a short time. I guess if Irika is like a father, and Aji-san is like a grandfather, then is Hinata my sister? He shook his head. That didn't feel right. She was more to him, he knew it, he just didn't have the words. Hinata. Hinata heard was every word, but at the thought of being more than just a sister to Naruto, she passed out. She repeated the words over and over. Anything for her. Anything for her. Anything for her. She chanted. Hinata. A voice pierced the fog that clouded her mind. Hinata. She heard the voice say again, this time more urgent. Hinata, help me. It yelled in a voice she now recognized as Naruto's. Sasuke is trying to molest me. Faggot. Hinata screamed, keep your gay hands off my NAR. She blushed a red so deep it almost looked purple, realizing Naruto was just joking with her.
Oh, hello Naruto-kun.
She started to push her fingers together. Was there something that you wanted to ask me? Well, I wanted to ask you. He stopped, shaking his head. Never mind. It's not important right now. Hinata's hopes fell as Naruto said it wasn't important. Remembering what he had said, however, made her smile. Naruto was thrown from his thoughts by the smile that Hinata now wore. Hinata, he said slowly, measuring his words. You should smile more often, you look nice when you do. Hinata's smile widened, though the blush on her face deepened at his words. She leaned over, kissing him quickly on the cheek. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she said quietly, her voice not even containing a hint of a stutter. She turned around and walked quickly back to Tezuna's house. Naruto shook his head. What the heck just happened? Asked Naruto. Oh, and as much as I like being spied upon, Miss Hunter-nin, be sure to tell Zabuza that I'd to speak to you both here tonight at midnight. Got it? Naruto didn't get a reply. All he heard was a rustle of leaves and footsteps in the distance. How the heck could he tell that I was here? And above that, why didn't he reveal it earlier? Haku shook her head as she jumped from tree to tree, back towards the hideout. I suppose I'll have to tell Zabuza-sama about the boy's request. And with that she sped up faster, leaving the leaves to flutter about in her wake. Time skip, midnight. Haku, are you sure this is a good idea? Zabuza asked quietly as the two made their way to the spot Naruto told them to meet him at. Right now I'm very weak from the fight with Kakashi, as well as the near-death state you put me in, and although I don't doubt your fighting skills. Well, this could be a trap, said Zabuza, moving slowly and deliberately through the forest. Not a single leaf crunched underfoot, nor a single twig broken. Zabuza was, after all, a master of the silent killing style. Do not worry, Zabuza-sama, this genin is by no means beyond my fighting skills. But I have a feeling that this boy has no intentions of trying to hurt or ambush us. Even she could find the doubt in her words. A leaf fell from overhead, as well as the slight crack of a branch. But Haku's sharp ears missed nothing, and she immediately looked towards the sound. Naruto crouched above them, balanced easily on a thin tree branch. So you showed up, Zabuza-san. He nodded towards the large man. Haku-chan, Naruto said casually, glancing at the newly named Hunter-nin. He leapt down from the tree branch, landing in front of the two. Okay, I'm really not one to mince words, so here it goes. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for the discussion he knew would come next. I want you two to ally with me. I want you two to fake your deaths the next time we fight and live in hiding for a bit before we truly do this. Neither Zabuza nor Haku were expecting this, and they were naturally suspicious. Naruto saw their expressions and his face took on a pleading look. I know it sounds like a trap, but it's not. I want to travel the world. I want to be in a place where I know I'm safe and not worrying about being killed in my bed or my apartment burned down. I know I stopped the attacks by striking back, but that would just make me even more hated. I just want to live a comfortable place where people don't take their kids away from me as I walk by, where people don't shoo their children away, or tell them not to play with me because I'm a bad person. I'm not a bad person, he said, raising his voice a little. I'm not, he said quietly. No one could see and only one person knew, but a single tear fell from the Naruto Uzumaki's eye. The blonde suddenly stiffened. Zabuza, Haku, please don't leave Naruto. I have to go fix something. I'll be back as soon as I can. I want the two of you to think over what I asked. The two nodded cautiously, knowing full well that Naruto could be telling them to wait so he could bring Kakashi to finish Zabuza off. Back at the house. Hinata, will you get Naruto? I have some pressing matters to discuss with him, and only him, so when you get him I want you and Sasuke to go out and train or something. I really don't care, Kakashi said. All right, Kakashi-sensei, Hinata said as she began to head up the stairs to where Naruto was staying along with Sasuke, but when she reached the room there was only one person within it, and that was Sasuke. Oh, Hinata-chan, I was just thinking about you, Sasuke said, getting up from the bed and slowly making his way over to Hinata. WYW, were you thinking about me, Sasuke? Hinata asked with a confused look on her face. Well, Miss Hyuga, he said, taking another step closer. I was just thinking about my clan, he said, an angry look on his face. I was beginning to think about how I was going to restore, and you popped in my mind. Sasuke took another step closer. This time Hinata took a step backwards. You, Hinata, are a Hyuga, one of the members of the strongest taijutsu users in the village. And I am an Uchiha, a clan known for their ninjutsu. He took another step closer. By now Hinata was becoming scared and began to understand what he was implying. She took a few more steps backwards. Just think, if the two were combined, I wouldn't just be restoring the Uchiha clan, I would be strengthening it, making it far stronger than it has ever been. Sasuke quickly closed the space between them with a single step. Hinata was out of places to run, having backed up straight into a wall. I need to make my clan strong once more, and you will help me whether you like it or not, he growled out as he began to grope the poor girl. Sasuke, Hinata began. Naruto-kun will come for me? She growled, finding strength deep inside herself as she fought against the stronger boy. And when he does, we'll kill you for doing this to me. She tried to hit him with a palm strike, but he grabbed his wrist, slamming against the wall and about his head. Oh, will he? Sasuke asked, an evil smile on his face. Silly girl, Naruto was the one who suggested it to me, the raven-haired boy said, trying to break the pale-eyed girl's will. Hinata shook her head. No, Naruto-kun would never do anything like that. And he will come save me, he promised. Sasuke shoved his face close to hers. We'll see, he snarled, clamping a hand over Hinata's mouth to stop her from crying out. Nearing the house. Naruto raced toward the house, plagued by a feeling of dread. I hope I'm wrong, he muttered to himself. Naruto heard voices echoing through the woods and raced faster towards the house. Knowing that they were coming from the room he and Sasuke shared, he moved in through the window, not wanting to give away his presence by using the door. No! Shouted a muffled, but distinctly feminine voice. You will do it, and now, said someone else, this voice a male, and judging by the tone, a very pissed-off one at that. Naruto darted in through the window, seeing Sasuke pinning Hinata against the wall. He acted instantaneously, drawing his katana as he moved. He smashed the hilt into the side of Sasuke's head, sending him tumbling away and crashing into the door. Naruto didn't take his eyes off Sasuke as the snarling boy got off the floor. Are you all right, Hinata-chan? She nodded. Why, yes, Naruto-kun. I'm fine now. Sasuke slowly picked himself up, moving into the Uchiha family taijutsu style. Naruto only glared at him. By all rights, I should kill you where you stand. Assault and attempted rape of a fellow leaf shinobi are crimes punishable by death. He looked at Hinata. What do you wish? He asked her. She shook her head. Don't kill him, Naruto-kun. It will raise questions when we return to the hidden leaf. Naruto nodded, spinning his katana with a flourish before sheathing it with practiced ease. Be grateful, Uchiha. He spat the word Uchiha like it was a curse, or simply poison to speak. Your life has been saved by the very person you attempted to attack. Naruto turned his back to the boy and began looking Hinata over for injuries, his fingers skimming slightly over her arms as he checked for bruising and fractures. Sasuke growled and raced towards the boy, drawing a kunai and attempting to drive it into his teammate's back. Naruto noticed the movement from the corner of his eye and spun, drawing his katana in a single move. He ducked low to the ground as he drew the black blade, dodging the kunai swipe. He flipped the sword as it neared Sasuke's body, crashing into his stomach with enough force to make him double over in pain, dry heaving as he attempted to draw air into his lungs. "You have been warned, Uchiha. Try that again and I will kill you." He sheathed his sword once more, regarding the boy behind him with cold eyes. "When we return to Konoha, I will try my best to have you stripped of your ninja rank." Sasuke chuckled behind him, having drawn enough air into his lungs to do so. "You can try anything you want. I'm too important for the council to allow me to be stripped of my rank." Naruto nodded. "That's true, but I will have you removed from our team." Sasuke's eyes visibly widened. "You can't do that. I need Kakashi to teach me how to use the Sharingan." Naruto smirked. "I guess you're out of luck then, aren't you?" Sasuke growled and stomped out of the room. Naruto turned back to Hinata, finding no bruises on her. He sighed in relief. "You're fine, Hinata-chan. I'm really glad you're okay." Hinata smiled, despite what had just happened to her. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. But if it's not too much trouble, could I sleep with you tonight?" Hinata asked, trembling with embarrassment. "Hinata," Naruto began slowly. "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, it was foolish of me to even think about asking you to. Let me sleep with you," she said. Naruto stepped forward, wrapping Hinata in a hug. Hinata's breath caught in her throat. "Hinata-chan," Naruto said, "don't ever think of yourself as a fool, because you're not. It's fine if you want to sleep with me, you've been through a lot today. We should use your room though. Sasuke sleeps in this one." Naruto suddenly remembered he'd left Zabuza and Haku waiting in the forest and cursed in his head. He hugged Hinata tighter, pulling her head into his shoulder so she wouldn't see that shadow clone he created. Hinata's breathing quickened. What was doing? He made the ram seal and a clone appeared next to him. He replaced himself with the clone, knowing that Hinata wouldn't know the difference unless she activated her Byakugan. Naruto slipped out the window and into the night before Hinata looked up. Back in the forest, Naruto dropped down through the leaves, landing directly in front of Zabuza and Haku. "Zabuza, have you thought about what I asked?" asked Naruto with a serious look on his face. Zabuza nodded. "And?" Naruto asked. "We agree, we'll go with you." Naruto smiled in relief but quickly became serious again. "Alright then, I want you and Haku to get in a battle with me and Hinata. I'll help both of you fake your deaths and you can go into hiding for a couple months. There's only one other thing though," he said. "What?" Zabuza asked. "I need the both of you to stay near the hidden leaf village somewhere that I can find you and tell you when we'll leave." Yeah, we understand, Blondie. You keep up your end of the bargain for a safe haven, and we'll fake our deaths and stay near the hidden leaf village." Naruto smiled gratefully. "Thank you. I have to get back to Tezuna's house, but the next time we fight will be when you two fake your deaths." With that, he turned and left, heading back towards Tezuna's house. Once Naruto was out of sight, Haku turned to her master. "Zabuza-sama, do you think Naruto will keep to his word and help us escape our horrible world of killing and death for a calm home life like he wants?" she asked. Zabuza smiled, ruffling the girl's hair in an affectionate way, but his eyes betrayed his own nervousness. "Honestly, Haku, I don't know," he sighed. "But right now, all we can do is hope he will keep his word." A sudden breeze blew through the clearing, ruffling the leaves and sending them into a flurry around the two ninja. When the leaves settled again, they were gone. Tezuna's house. Naruto crept into Hinata's room as quietly as he could, smiling gently at the sight of the girl curled up against his shadow clone. Naruto replaced himself with the shadow clone once again, dispelling it when he was done. Hinata's arms were draped loosely around his neck, her head resting against his chest. "Good night, Hinata-chan."
Good night, Naruto-kun.
She mumbled in her sleep. He finally fell asleep at just past 2:30 a.m. Morning time. "Hinata," Naruto said, shaking the girl next to him gently. "Hinata, wake up, it's time for breakfast." Hinata stretched and yawned cutely before curling into a ball and lying back down. Naruto shook her again. "Hinata, you gotta get up." She frowned. "Fine," she said, sitting up. Naruto got out of the bed and dressed quickly, oblivious to the blush of the now awake Hinata. "Hinata," he said, turning to her as he pulled on a clean black shirt. I'm going to go downstairs and eat before training. I'll see you in a few minutes. He slipped quietly out the door, leaving Hinata with her perverted thoughts. Naruto walked downstairs to see a skulking, brooding, bitch of an emo, aka Sasuke, and Kakashi with his nose so close to his precious book you'd think the book was glued to his face. Naruto, Kakashi started. I want you to stay here and guard the house until we get back from training. Judging by your fight with Zabuza a few days ago, already know about water walking and tree climbing. Naruto just shook his head. Actually, that was just pure instinct, but I'll still stay here. Good, he said. Hinata came walking down the stairs and began to eat a quick breakfast of oatmeal. Kakashi stood by the door, waiting. When she was done, he turned to them. Well, Sasuke, Hinata, let's get going, he said, walking out the door. Naruto put a hand on Sasuke's shoulder, making the boy turn to face him. Sasuke snarled at the touch but said nothing. Listen here, Uchiha, he said slowly, his voice low and even. If you touch a hair on her head, or if I even think you tried anything, I'll put you through a torture so horrible you'll be screaming for me to stop before I'm halfway finished. The look in Naruto's eyes told Sasuke that the blonde boy was not even remotely joking. I mean it. I will now, don't tempt me. Naruto turned back to his food and Sasuke left the house. 1 week later, I'm a little too lazy, put a whole week into this, so. Yeah. Okay, Sasuke, Hinata, come, we have to get to the bridge before so we can protect Tazuna, Kakashi said quietly, not wanting to wake up a sleeping Naruto. Naruto had been out training all night and Kakashi, though the boy needed to rest. But what about Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. He needs to rest. Come on, let's get going. Hi! They both yelled. At the bridge, Zabuza stood before Kakashi, Hinata, and Sasuke. Haku was at his side, staring impassively at the three. A thick mist covered the stone bridge, almost completely cutting it off from view. What they could see, however, were splashes of blood from the bleeding or dead workers. Zabuza! Kakashi yelled. Zabuza simply glared at the Kapinin. Fuck off, Kakashi, just stay back. Me and that blonde brat of yours have a score to settle when he gets here. I want to fight Naruto and you aren't going to stand in my way, said Zabuza, a threatening look on his face. Kakashi's single visible eye widened. I won't let you. You'll kill him and I won't allow him to die, Kakashi shouted, drawing a kunai and charging at the missing Nin. Back at the house. What the hell is all that noise downstairs? Naruto asked, rolling out of bed. He blinked in confusion, noticing that someone wasn't in the bed with him. Fuck, he said quietly. Where is Hinata-chan? Naruto shouted, hastily pulling on his clothes and making his sword stick to his back with chakra. They wouldn't. Damn it all to hell, they did, didn't they? He screamed, running down the stairs. He heard Tsunami scream and leapt down the stairs, drawing his sword as he did. 2 men wielding katanas had broken down the door to the house and now held Tsunami by both arms, dragging her out the door. Inari cowered in a corner where they couldn't see him, crying silently as to not attract attention to himself. Naruto jumped the last few stairs, kicking one of the men in the chest and sending him flying backwards. There was a loud schluck where he hit and blood began to pool in the man's mouth. A large chunk of wood left over from where they broke down the door now impaled him through the heart. Naruto drew his katana, tossing it at the other samurai. The man's eyes unconsciously followed the blade and Naruto dashed forward, kicking the man in the head and sending him flying backwards where he bounced off the wall. Naruto caught his sword and it spun through the air, stabbing backwards and impaling the man through the chest as he fell towards the floor. Naruto pulled his katana from the man's body and raced out the door, desperate to catch up with them before they tried to kill Zabuza, who they no doubt thought was an enemy. At the bridge, the fighters suddenly stopped as a strange aura was over the bridge. It was strong, but they were at a loss for words as Naruto dropped down between Zabuza and Kakashi, holding back Kakashi's kunai with one hand, his hand gripping his sensei's wrist. His other hand held Zabuza's sword, pushing back to equalize the pressure on his body. He knocked the fighters' hands away, slamming into their chests with a palm strike that sent them skidding backwards. His hands now free, he drew a senbon in an instant, tossing it at Haku with a flick of his wrist. A strange liquid sloshed back and forth inside the needle as it flew towards Haku, impaling her right above her heart. Her eyes widened in surprise as the needle found its mark, amazed that he was able to take her out with such a fluid motion. Dark crimson flames began to lick around the edges of Naruto's katana, and he dashed forwards at a speed that only Kakashi and Zabuza could follow. "Yashinkin no Jutsu!" he cried out, slashing his sword at the air. The crimson flames trailed behind the dark blade and carried Haku off the bridge and into the dark waters below. The ice mirrors Haku had created melted to reveal a bleeding Sasuke with a large spear of ice through him. Sasuke, 2 minutes before Naruto's arrival. He felt it, felt the power washing over him. It was gaining on them and fast. "Damn it!" Sasuke screamed in his mind. "Where the hell is he getting all that power?" Sasuke began to shake with fury and anger. "That power should be mine. I should have that power. I need it more than him. He doesn't deserve such power." He screamed out loud. "Shit!" he yelled as a flurry of sunbon embedded them where he was only seconds ago. "You're fast, boy, but can you keep up with me?" Haku asked with a smirk, sending another barrage of sunbon at the boy. Sasuke escaped, but one pierced his kneecap and he grunted in pain. "Ah!" Sasuke shouted, "Like a weakling, like you could kill me. I am the great Uchiha Sasuke, last survivor of the Uchiha clan," he yelled out as hands beginning to flash through seals. "Great ice blizzard," cried Haku, moving through hand seals of her own. Snow began to fall within the dome of mirrors, smashing into Sasuke with enough force to actually form small cuts along his body. "Great ice needle," she yelled. The snow began to pack together, forcing itself into ice and shifting into the form into a giant ice needle. "Shit!" Sasuke yelled, beginning to move through seals faster than ever. "Great fireball!" Sasuke yelled out as a giant flame shot out of his mouth and surrounded Haku. Steam rose from the needle as the fire vaporized the frozen water. "Weakling!" he muttered, turning around like the arrogant Uchiha he is. "Fire!" Haku said, just loud enough for Sasuke to hear her and turn around. His eyes widened as the needle flew forward from the steam and impaled him in the stomach. Real time. Naruto turned away from the bridge and faced Zabuza. "Zabuza of the Mist, it's time to repent for your sins," Naruto yelled, twirling his katana and leveling it at the man. "Bring it on, brat," he sneered, resting his massive sword on his shoulder. Naruto chuckled softly. "And so it begins," he said quietly, dashing forward to meet his already moving opponent. "Naruto, don't. He's too strong for you," Kakashi cried out. Naruto paid him no mind. "D!" Naruto shouted, his small black katana crashing into Zabuza's. The air crashed back into place with a thunderous roar as both Naruto and Zabuza struggled for dominance. Each time they would break apart for a moment, crashing back together almost instantly. The wind blasted back Hinata and Kakashi's hair from the sheer force of which the two were fighting. "Be careful, Naruto-kun," Hinata whispered as she went back in her defensive position in front of Tazuna. Dark black Ryatsu began to gather around Naruto as the two fought, gathering along his sword. "Well, kid, you're good at your swordsmanship, I'll give you that," Zabuza panted as they broke apart again. "Stand down, Naruto. You can't win this fight." Naruto showed no signs that he had heard. "Naruto, as your commanding officer, I order you to stand down," yelled Kakashi, racing over to Sasuke and pumping chakra in his half-dead student. "I have to finish this, Zabuza," Naruto said quietly. Zabuza gave an almost imperceptible nod. "I'll see you again," Naruto promised, his voice so soft that he doubted that his new ally heard. Naruto started to twirl his sword around and around. The Ryatsu began to be absorbed into it and the sword started to glow a ruby red. "Death's beautiful grace," Naruto said, the glow of the sword fading slightly as he cut down the flow of Ryatsu to the sword. "Die!" he yelled. The same crimson flames as earlier shot from the tip of the sword and crashed into Zabuza's chest, sending him flying backward off the bridge like Haku had earlier. There was laughter behind Naruto that sounded like a squirrel that had inhaled too much helium. "I always knew those two were weak. I never should have hired them," Naruto slowly began to turn around, the red glow fading completely from his sword. But I do thank you, boy. I never planned to pay them anyway, and you just saved me quite a bit of work. Naruto finished turning now, coming face to face with a small man in a black pinstripe suit with dark, gold-rimmed sunglasses. He held a cane in his right hand, though it was obvious that it was just for show. But sadly now it is your time to go. Men charge! The tyrant who had oppressed Wave Country for so long yelled. The 100 men behind him yelled together, charging towards Naruto in a massive tide of blades and flesh. Fools! Naruto muttered under his breath. Fine. Then prepare to die a pitiless death. The boy brought his sword just in front of his face. Its black blade did not show his reflection. Omega, he whispered under his breath as a black flame shot out from the sword. The flame consumed the mercenaries before him. The black flames licked hungrily at their bodies as it burned them all to a crisp. The only thing left was 100 small orbs hovering over their lifeless ashes. In a swift motion, they all shot forward to Naruto's sword, making it turn a deep purple as they entered it. Naruto twirled his sword, the purple glow slowly fading, before resting it on his shoulder and gazing coldly at Gato. Is that all? He asked, his voice as cold as his gaze. Everyone was dumbstruck. No words could comprehend what just happened. No words could tell someone the despair of the tyrant before them. I can pay you off. The cruel man began to stammer, his courage and arrogance gone now that his mercenaries were dead. I swear I'll leave this bridge and never come back. By now the man was almost crying as Naruto began to step towards him, his footsteps echoing loudly on the stone. I'll give you anything you want. The man screamed in fear. Just don't kill me, please, he cried. Naruto halted his steps, his sword falling from his shoulder. Your bank account numbers, Naruto said slowly. The man's eyes went wide behind his shades, but he quickly wrote down a few numbers on a piece of paper. Here, take this, it is my bank accounts, all of them, he said, quivering with fear. Naruto simply shook his head. I can't allow you to live. You would only continue to harm innocent people. He slowly lowered his sword from his shoulder, the purple glow reappearing once more, now brighter than before. Gato began to run back towards his boat, screaming in terror. No, you can't do this. I gave you what you asked. His blade spun above Naruto's head, whistling as it cut through the air. Shinigami's grace. Naruto swung the sword down. A blade of dark purple energy shot forth and crashed into the man with a loud explosion and a blinding. When the light had died down enough for them to see again, the horrible man was gone. Naruto slid the blade back into its sheath and walked back towards his team and Tazuna. They all watched silently as Naruto pressed the slip of paper with one of Gato's multiple million Ryu bank accounts into Tazuna's hand. He kept the others for himself. He would need them for what he was planning. This should get Wave back on the right track, Naruto said quietly. He turned back towards his team. Let's go. The mission's over and we should return to Konoha. He began to walk back towards the house, his team still too stunned to say anything. Sasuke might have said something that proved how arrogant and obnoxious he was, but he was currently unconscious from blood loss and was now swung over Kakashi's should like the sack of crap he is. Tazuna watched them leave, tears making his eyes misty as he thought of how much this one boy had given to Wave. The great Naruto bridge. He promised under his breath, his hand clenching the piece of paper tighter. Time skip day later. The four were back on the road again, this time heading back towards Konoha. The tension was thick. Jealousy, anger. What was that? Sadness? We'll set up camp here tonight, Kakashi said, pointing over to the side of the road where a patch of grass would obscure them from view. Convenient, huh? Sasuke had now awoken and had bandages tied around his midsection to protect the wound in his stomach. He grabbed Naruto by the shoulder, spinning the boy around to face him. You'd better give me that sword, Dobe. You are too weak to have the amount of power it gives you, and I deserve that power more. I need it more than you. I need it to kill Itachi, Sasuke screamed. Naruto only laughed in Sasuke's face. And what makes you think you'll ever be strong enough to defeat Itachi? He completed the academy at 7, was a Chunin by 8, had unlocked his Sharingan by 8, was a Jonin by 10, and an Umbu captain by 13. You're 13 now, and what have you accomplished? Nothing. Haven't even unlocked your Sharingan yet, have you, oh mighty Uchiha? He asked mockingly, feigning a bow. Sasuke growled but said nothing. Naruto smirked, straightening up from his bow. But if you think you can handle my sword, by all means take it. Sasuke snarled and grabbed the sword from Naruto's outstretched hand. He tried to pull the blade from the sheath, but it remained stuck and didn't move an inch. Maybe you should try channeling chakra into the sword before you draw it. Sasuke did so grudgingly. His hands began to glow as he channeled chakra into the sword. There was a loud scream from the boy, and Sasuke let go of the sword. Fell to the ground, smoking slightly. Sasuke held up his smoking hands. They were now as black as ash and soot. Naruto turned away as if he hadn't seen what happened to Sasuke, putting a finger to his chin and pausing in mock thought. But if someone without my permission or my blood tried to do that, the sword would probably burn them pretty badly. Naruto turned back to face the Avenger and stared at Sasuke's hands as if seeing them for the first time. Holy shit, Sasuke, he shouted. What the hell happened to your hands? Uzumaki, I'm going to have you arrested for deliberately attacking another shinobi. Sasuke screamed. Kakashi simply continued walking along the path, whistling as though he hadn't heard anything. Naruto glared at the boy, a triumphant look hidden deep in the rage that swelled inside them like a stormy sea. You do that, and I'll make sure the council knows all about what their precious Uchiha tried to do to the heir to the Hyuga clan. You wouldn't want Hayashi mad at you now, would you? Sasuke simply stared back angrily. I didn't think so, besides, it's your own fault for trying to take my sword. Sasuke smirked, a plan forming in his mind. You can try, Uzumaki, but if I arrange a marriage with her, all my crimes will be forgotten. Just the thought of the two most powerful clans joining together would have the council drooling and tripping all over themselves with joy. They won't be able to sign that marriage contract fast enough. Naruto growled deep in his throat and began to draw his katana, but stopped noticing that they were in sight of the Konoha. He slowly sheathed the blade. We'll finish this later, Uchiha. He spat the last word, as if it were a curse or poison on the tongue. 2 days later, Hidden Leaf. And this is why, Council, I wish to marry Hinata Hyuga, said Sasuke. Absolutely not, yelled Hayashi. I will not have my daughter submitted to him, he yelled. All in favor of Uchiha-san's request? Asked a civilian council member. I will remove my clan from Konoha, Hayashi threatened. Do what you will, said one pompous council member. We will have a far stronger clan on our hands once Hinata is bedded with Sasuke-san. I am no longer of this council. I am going to move my clan in 3 weeks' time, and we no longer be Konoha shinobi, he said with venom in his voice. He got up and left the room, but not before pushing Sasuke out of his way first.